That's not funny.
Yesterday, I was like, hey.
Score a touchdown.
That game yesterday.
What are you talking about? Yeah, I was mortified.
I used to be.
I know what you're talking about. I thought I'm totally kidding. I'm kidding.
All right, good evening, folks. I'm gonna call a special meeting October 30, 2023 to order now. If you all please join me for the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Roll call.
Alderman Ross.
Here.
Alderman Rucker.
Here.
Alderman Rose.
Here.
Alderman Schuman.
Here.
Alderman Hoffman.
Here.
Alderman Osteen. Mayor Harmson.
Here.
I did talk to Bob this afternoon, and he is planning on being here. Yeah, he was in transit when I talked to him.
Very good. All right, we have no unfinished business. New business in the fiscal year 2024 operating budget draft workshop number 3. Gina Woodford.
Yes, Mayor, members of the board. So tonight's kind of the final, I guess, 4 departments or divisions: engineering, transportation, water, and sewer. I know in discussing water and sewer, we'll discuss CIT as well. And then at the end, do you circle back onto unfinished items, or do you want to do that now? I will let you tell me how you guys want to go ahead and go through the agenda and then circle back with other things if that works out.
Why don't we wait till Bob gets here when we can talk about?
Like any pending, like something. Okay, well, let's just plan on doing that at the end of that, if that works. Okay. Engineering is on page 49. Really, the big change here is it's not any new position, it's just vacant. We have reposted that with new information, and that will be going out on several association sites here as well shortly. The only other change this year is the GIS will, once we get the engineering department, they will kind of transfer over under engineering. So you'll see a little bit of a budget change, it's just moving it out of one fund to another fund. Other than that, those are the only 2 big changes.
Which department were they in?
GIS was in Public Works under the operation manager.
So we're like a third, or?
It was, yeah. It was a split, it was a shared budget, yeah. So really taking it out of those 3 funds and moving it to the general fund. As I explained on the administrative reimbursement, this is a piece, one reason the administrative reimbursement did look a little different from past year, because this is a general fund admin that also then through that version or that calculation gets reimbursed. General fund gets reimbursed for engineering, so.
And specifically for the GIS.
At the whole department, any function that they support, whether it's water, sewer, transportation, airports, there's a calculation for that. So yes, it does increase the general fund budget, but you will see the reimbursement through the administrative reimbursement. And I do have still some open questions you guys had asked at last budget that I don't have that information on administrative reimbursement, but I will get that to you before the draft too.
Gina, I'm questioning, just like I have an explanation, I'm looking at the health insurance that way back in 2020 was 42,000, and then it dropped all the way down, and now it's back up to 39. I don't quite understand that fluctuation.
Well, health insurance cost follows the specific employees in that department. So back in 2020, we still had some individuals. That was when we had just started outsourcing through Cochrane, and we still had some employees who have moved around to other parts of the city.
Okay.
So I'm also estimating that we brought one new person over, and then with the city engineer, I'm assuming the city engineer will take the full family plan.
Okay.
It's
Otherwise,
a direct relationship to the people in there.
gotcha. All right, thank you.
So I have a couple of questions. Salaries, it's not like it's a big number, but $9,200 worth of salaries in 23. What would that be for?
Well, that's a good question. That could be a typo.
Okay.
I will highlight that with my pink check later.
And then I realize that we're going to have, so there's professional services that are currently budgeted in 23 was 395, and I don't know. I know that there's a budget adjustment coming, but I'm assuming that we're spending a lot more than 395 this year. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes,
What
so-
ballpark is that? We're probably going to, is that number going to end up being?
I'd have to look on the Excel sheet. Mike keeps up to date for me. Mike, unless you know right off the top of your head, any project that has direct engineering, we book that under the project to keep the cost of the project. So you're right, there's a lot of moving pieces and I don't have that.
And the reason, and just, that was the start of the question, but why would engineering's professional services only go down to 300,000 next year? Now, is that because we don't think that we're going to staff this? And I realize we're probably not going to have an engineer on board January 1st, but it just seems like we're adding an engineer, but the professional services are going down a great level.
The direct engineering invoice dollars that gets coded to engineering also include any, plan reviews and stuff. So yes, you're right. Once you get them acclimated, there'll be some of those services they will take over. Mike will have to answer how he estimated those because that's his number.
So the number that you see there at 395
No, the 300 for 2024.
it's going up 95,000 this year, almost entirely because of design and inspection services that we hire out this year. Now, with an engineer coming on board, I'm assuming that at least some of that is going to come back in-house. So I felt like leaving it at 300 was as good of a number as any at this point, because if they're here, they're going to help with those. That's going to take down some of our out-of-the-office costs.
Okay, because, I mean, I'm not sure if this projected year in is $407,000, but we're still going up another $160,000, which is about 30 or 40%, whenever we're trying to bring this in-house as an overall. Now, part of that, I guess, is because you got your GIS salaries in there, so it's still probably going up $100,000. So let me ask you this about permitting and inspections, okay? Has anyone stopped, and if you haven't, that's okay, I realize everybody's busy, and taken a look at some of these permitting costs that we're collecting, and then comparing how much time and money we're spending on the inspections? So I'm gonna take Harper's Cove. I think you guys go there every day, or used to, Dave, okay? And I have no idea exactly what the numbers are that you guys have racked up. I'm beginning to become concerned, and I have no idea what their permit fees are. I'm beginning to wonder if we're spending more money reviewing and inspecting than we're bringing in. While I don't want it to be a profit center, I get that. Is anyone trying to keep track of things like that? Not every single permit and things like that I get, but for the big ones or anything like that.
So permitting on the front end through the building department, I'm not sure I can answer that question, Gina.
Well, you know what, you may not know what the revenue is, but is anyone keeping track on any kind of project basis? How much, for example, Cochrane has spent at Harper's Cove?
Keeping track on a project basis, yes.
Okay.
But comparing that to revenue, that's not something I have done. No.
Okay.
Are you putting it to man hours?
No, I'm more looking for, I have no idea, so I'm just gonna throw some numbers out there. I'm looking at, let's just say the permit for Harper's Cove is $20,000, okay? I have no idea what it is.
How
okay?
many checks?
So if we're spending $30,000 to get them to the point that they are done with inspections, well, that's not a good model, is what I'm trying to say. And while I don't know that we need to do that on every single project by any means, especially large ones, that should be something that we, every once in a while, keep an eye on, is what I'm trying to say.
Mike is correct. He kind of took over that tracking that I was doing, and it's by project. I mean, and Dave, I gotta thank Cochrane. They, first year so really worked with me. It's like, can you set your invoicing up like this? Because we do track it by project. So it's just a matter of getting with Ron. And it's like, okay, the worst case scenarios that take a lot of time and the least case that take,
Well, and I get the fact that, Ron's department, there's inspections, that's part of the deal. Cochrane's part of the deal, okay? But if we're really not watching, And I realize that everybody's very busy, that's not a shot at anybody, but if we're really not watching on any kind of basis, then that kind of stuff can sneak up on you next thing you know. We're doing a heck of a nice job making sure that the engineer does, or the developer does their job, but it's costing a lot more money than we thought. Just a thought. And that's all I have.
Well, let me piggyback on that. While you're opening that can of worms, you need to open it up all the way for residential inspections, commercial inspections, and you don't need to micro look at one, because I just know from my history when I ran an inspection department back many years ago, you get
Have an average.
this one here and you're there every stinking day for lots of reasons. Then you get the next one, you're there once, you're there when the final, and it just flows, and you spend, so it's gotta be,
Right.
you're gonna have some that you're gonna lose and some you're gonna gain, and it's gotta, so we just have to kind of look at it from that perspective, but it should be looked at, like Richard said, sure,
So I have.
Any other questions on engineering? No, we've moved to transportation. I'm just gonna hit a couple highlights on the revenue, and then I will let Mike hit his highlights on O&M and capital. Revenue and one thing, special road district. Oh, I'm sorry, 61. 61 is the revenue, and Alderman Rucker had asked me about special road district contributions. So 2024, I'm looking into that. That may get upped because I need to get with Carrie and accounts receivable and budget, look at that. Other than that, I mean, the tax Osage Beach, that's the same percent as I predicted, with 1% in general fund. You have your other taxes. Nothing really other than the same story with all the interest earned. We've done very well with our new investment procedures. So there's really not anything out of the ordinary on the revenue side.
I have a question. The special road district contributions, are we the only, isn't there another entity that puts into that fund, or is it just us?
No, the Osage Beach Special Road District helps funds and reimburses certain private road projects, and that's our partnership. So that's the incoming dollar that they contribute to construction costs or whatever, and it's project specific. So some years, as you can tell, we've had lots of projects going on, and other ones not as many. So, and in the construction outline, I will have them labeled Osage Beach Special Road District projects.
But Mike, when we went and did that tour, back in April, and we looked at all those roads, we looked at what, 15 roads?
Something like that,
And
yeah.
we're doing one, right?
We're not doing any of the roads that we looked at.
No.
But I'll address that in my capital comments here for transportation here in a minute.
Okay, thanks.
All right. So I'm just gonna go through a few highlights on O&M and then open it up for questions for O&M, and then I'll move on to capital. So for the most part, for transportation, O&M is basically the same as it was last year, with only a few minor changes. A couple of highlights I'll point out. The upgrades to ODOT's retroreflect sign requirements are almost complete. This would be looking at 276-400, 20-00-276-400, which is the sign parts and maintenance account. You'll see that that is going to start to drop off. For the last 2 years, we've been spending quite a bit of money there to kind of get ourselves to the point where we are compliant. And Rob just has a little bit more to go next year, and then we'll have that done. And then per the attached spreadsheet, you'll see, I think it's third from the back, is the updated pavement preventive maintenance plan. So per the attached 2024 PPMP plan, calls for only crack sealing on multiple road groups. This is why you'll see another 80,000 allocated in road repair and maintenance. As we did this year, that's account number 20-00-761-300. Because we are redoing Osage Beach Road this year, there are no other PPMP projects on the books other than some crack sealing. One thing I will point out is if you look out into 2026 and 2027, you'll see that that's when we will start the overlay for the parkway. And then the other thing I will point out is some of the crack sealing we are doing in 2024 is on the parkway. So a couple of things to keep in mind as we start to think about what's going to happen with those costs here over the next few years. Those are the only two accounts I wanted to point out. Does anybody else have any other questions on any other O&M accounts for transportation?
Excuse me, Mike, I'm referring to asking about Jeffries Road, of course, with the Oasis, and I see that, you know, the expense of $25,000, and I just want, I know they're gonna be working with MoDOT, with Oasis there, I'm just wondering what's gonna happen with that.
I'm sorry, where are you looking at?
I'm looking at,
DEP plan under Jeffries, 2029.
Yeah.
yeah, all the way,
Florida
yeah, 2024, I mean, 24 is, there's nothing, 25 city crew or whatever, I'm just curious about this year going in with the Oasis there with Jeffries Road and the city costs with MoDOT.
Sure. That number, that's not a number I've changed. That number has been there for a couple of years since we started this. So that far out, we just need to kind of update that 2029 number. We may or may not need to do that at this point.
I'm not that concerned about 29, excuse me, I'm more concerned about this coming year, what expense we're gonna be incurring.
For Jeffries?
Mm-hmm.
None.
None? I thought there was something with the coordinating with MoDOT as far as the traffic flow because of Oasis.
Yeah, but that's all on the developer, not on the city.
Is what?
It's all on the developer, not on the city.
Okay.
So we won't have any cost to do any reconstruction or changes on Jeffries. That'll be the cost of the developer and their conjunction with MoDOT. I mean, obviously, we're a player in that and we'll be involved in those decisions,
Right.
involved in those meetings, but it won't be on our dime.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. So, and Rob, you may be able to help us, appreciate you being here. What kind of chemicals do we use, or why would that double next year?
Chemicals be salt.
That's salt? Okay. And any particular reason why it's doubling next year?
What do we got down for that?
So just in 2023, we did not need to do our full load because we had such a light winter over the previous winter. So we only used half of the money that we normally would, sir. But we always put the full amount. And then once we get a little closer, we figure out whether or not we're going to need to spend the full 40,000. Consistently over the last few years, we've been right around that 40,000 mark. Every once in a while, we have a light winter and we don't spend it all.
Okay. Good. I wasn't sure what chemicals were. That helps me understand a little bit, but I realized, okay, so the only other question is under O&M is electrical services, streetlights. Is that also for maintenance of traffic signals?
No, that's separate.
So I'm just curious for my own knowledge, what do we spend $60,000 a year on streetlights? Is that like what we have to pay Ameren for maintenance, or are we paying somebody to come service our streetlights and we're incurring that kind of cost?
No, this is the electric bill for the streetlights.
Oh, that's electricity.
Yeah.
Okay, my mistake.
It may
That didn't seem
include
like maintenance.
some of the leasing costs because that comes in on the electric bill, but that's what that is.
Got it. I didn't think about that as being, sorry, the zoning. Okay, fair enough. I got it. That's all I have on that.
All right, I'll move on to capital. So in the capital section, there's a couple of, I'm just going to kind of highlight 2 or 3 of the more important purchases that we're looking at, and then I'll move on to projects. So in the equipment and machinery and equipment line item 774255, which the detail of this you can find on page 64, right there in the middle under total machinery and equipment. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to buy a new Laserline V200. It's a new road striping machine. Some of you may remember the one that we have is technically made for parking lots. It's not made for roads. So it's made to make 12-foot painting stripes and then stop. But we're kind of pushing it to the limit with what we're using it. And because we're doing that, we're causing a lot of wear and tear on the machine. So our preference would be to buy a new one and then replace it with this. And Gina, I do apologize. I think I probably did not put a replacement on this one. This is a replacement. So my apologies for that. And I can get with you after and we can talk about the surplus piece of that. The second thing we want to buy is a rear discharge mower. All the mowers that we have right now are the side discharge. We want to kind of replace the oldest one that we have with this rear discharge. We feel like the rear discharge will get better use on the parkway. We feel like we can hopefully reduce some of the claim issues that we have from the side discharge with debris. We feel like rear discharge would be a safer for pedestrians that are driving by while we're mowing. The one that we're replacing is quite old, and so that's one of the major things that we're doing. Then we're gonna buy a mini walk-behind skidster, and that's gonna be shared cost by all three departments. It's something that's badly needed because of our narrow roads, because of where some of our sewer cans are. Sometimes the equipment that we have is just too big to get to them. Right now, when we run into this, we simply rent that equipment, but there's enough need in all departments that we feel like this would be a good add to our list of resources. Let's see here. So that is all for that account. Vehicles. The only new vehicle purchase for transportation that we want to do in 2024 is a new Tyco 435 reach-in street sweeper. We would like to trade in the current street sweeper. So current street sweeper has a broken rear broom that must be manually raised and lowered. It has a broken left side broom that will not extend. Every time you use it burns out fuses. So obviously we struggle with this machine. And before anybody talks about maintenance, I can promise you, we are trying to find people to work on this machine. It's just that it is a discontinued product. The people that we have found to work on it, there's long lead times on parts. So a lot of what you see that's broken there, we're looking for those parts. We're looking for somebody to help us fix that. We just can't find it right now. Additionally, our existing street sweeper is not made for hills and valleys of the Ozarks. The new machine will have brooms that will pivot and have multiple height settings that will allow us to kind of get the hills and valleys a little bit better than what we do now. The new dump truck, this was already approved, and we're going to talk a little bit more about it on Thursday as there's a little bit of a price change on it, but we still expect that truck will be delivered in the third quarter. And then last but not least, I just want to make mention of this. I know the chief talked about this the other day. I talked to Gina about this. The next dump truck, the other international dump truck, is due to be replaced in 2024, but it is a 12 to 18 month process. So Gina told me just not to put it in there. So what we'd like to do in the fall is bring that to you, get permission to proceed on it, because we may not get that dump truck until the end of 25 or 26. So even though it's not in the budget, our plan is to get the blessing of the board to go ahead and purchase that, because we have such a long time to wait for it. So just keep that in mind. And that's all I have for the street. Well, okay, I'm sorry. One last thing, the street department, you know what, before I talk about major projects, anybody have any questions on the capital, operating capital purchases that I've discussed, or any questions about any other capital, and then I'll talk about projects.
So I am just curious, what do we use a plasma cutter for in transportation?
Various things like if we're making street signs, we'll use it for that. If we're working on projects or building anything around the shop, it'd be a lot easier then.
We do a lot of metal work, do we, in transportation? Yeah. Okay. And how old is this rear discharge mower? Or the one we're replacing that we want to go to? Rear discharge sounds like a smart idea because people usually don't stand behind a mower. I get that idea.
The one that we're replacing is the oldest one in our fleet. I think it's 11 or 12 years old.
I thought 13.
Okay. And then you said the mini skid steer, I didn't understand that. You said it's a walk behind?
Yeah, it's a walk behind.
So
It's it's for real tight spots. It'll work good for moving pallets around, because most of the time we have to have our equipment there if we get a delivery in. Don't get me wrong, it's gonna be great out on the road, because some of them houses are built pretty narrow, and they're trying to bring pumps down there for sewer. They need to have access to get in between two houses, and our equipment's just too big. And it's.
and that's fine, I'm learning how much things cost, but a walk behind
Yeah,
skid steer is $175,000 to $100,000.
I didn't look at the price of that.
Okay, fair enough, I just was trying to understand that. And then lastly, try to be quick here, any idea how many hours a year on average we use the street sweeper?
We use it, try to use it, we use it once a month. I mean, not once a month, once a week.
Okay, so like a whole day, or?
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
And I
so-
wanna use it more than that, just don't got staffing where I can't.
It's fine. So we usually probably round numbers, 50 hours times 8, 400 or 500 hours a year. Okay, cool. I rarely see it, but I know it comes by every once in a while. So I was just curious. And on top of that, how old is that one, do you know?
It's an 08.
It's an 08. Okay, because I thought it was used when it was purchased, but maybe that was the one before it then. Okay, so it's 15 years, so these things cost us 10 grand a year to own. Does the company still manufacture it? The company that manufactured that one, are they still in business?
We're having trouble with mechanics on that.
I was gonna say, they should have authorized service reps for that, but they don't work so well. Sometimes they don't.
Well, it broke down on us probably in July, and he come and worked on it a little bit, and we didn't get it going until December.
And so are we buying it from the same company that?
No.
Okay, that's all I need, that's all I have, thank you.
Excuse me. Where did you get your number on the mini skid steer? Mini skid steer, because it's 28,000 times 3 is about 85, 90,000.
90, I thought I said 100,000, but okay, 90.
I thought you said 170,000.
No.
I think you meant like 75 to 100.
75.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
I still thought that was a lot of money for a walk behind machine. It doesn't cover its own.
I was okay with this, and all of a sudden, I thought you said like 170, I was like, oh, I got a little, okay.
No.
Turn my hearing aids up one notch.
All right, so let me move on to projects, and one other comment. I apologize.
I'm probably just missing it, but we're asking to replace 2 new water service trucks.
That's in the water department, sir. We're in transportation right now, so we'll do water next.
Yes.
Ahead of you.
There was
Just a minute.
easy answer to that.
All right, so if there are no other questions, I'll go on to the projects. One quick comment I want to make, at every department, I'm just going to kind of get this out of the way now because every department asked me to do this. Every department wanted me to make sure that I thanked the board for the hydrovac. And I put that in here in a couple of different places on each one of these. So I'm not going to go back over it again, but you can read some of the specific reasons why each department looks or likes the product. And I can tell you that we're running into other problems, and that is departments fighting over it. So I think that's probably a good thing to have. As you can tell, it's getting a lot of use, and it's been a major addition for us. So on to transportation projects. I'm just going to kind of hit the highlights of these, and then if there are any specific questions about the projects, we can dive into those a little deeper. So, and for anybody that's interested, I'm on page 4 of my transportation budget summary. So Parkway extension, the bids and plans are ready. They've been approved by MoDOT. The engineer is working with the 2 property owners that are right there around the property on the final easements. Pending easements, this project is shovel ready and should be bid out over the winter for spring construction. The only thing is those easements have not been finalized. So that's the only thing at this point that could kind of, we could fumble the ball on here is the easement issue.
Why?
Because I don't know the details. The last time I talked to them, they were both wanting something, and that was just for a construction easement. And now we need a real easement. So I don't know. I'm going to be meeting with Kurt next week, so I should have some more information after I talk to him.
Who's dealing with this?
Anderson Engineering.
Enough said.
Osage Beach Road reconstruction, final bid packet and plans will be ready within the next 45 to 60 days. We'll be bidding over the winter with construction over spring and early summer. And as I mentioned before, because we're spending all this money on Osage Beach Road, we're just doing crack sealing this year. There's no other major PP&P projects until 2025. And you'll find those details a few pages back there. Highway 42 sidewalk project, we are in the process of finalizing those plans. MoDOT review is still pending. We expect to bid that project out over the winter and then start in the spring and early summer construction. Obviously, we're being very cognizant of the school schedule here. We will likely start on the Columbia Avenue side of the project before school gets out, with the hope that by the time that we get to the school property, school is out and we can finalize all of that over the summer with none of the kids in the way. And then stormwater, we continue to see an influx of drainage issues around town where the city is putting water on private property. The drainage projects listed are the ones that are considered the highest priority, but I can tell you that we have another set of drainage improvements, 3 or 4 a year for the next couple of years, all around town, various drainage issues here in town. And then the only other thing is the highlights I talked about with the hydrovac. So any questions on projects?
Yes. So I'm trying to understand. So I just did a quick math, and I think I'm in the ballpark. It's somewhere around $625,000 to $640,000 we're spending on drainage. Okay. And Osage Beach Road rehab's 1.5 or something to that effect. It seems like, and I hope that I don't understand how drainage became such a huge issue so fast. And I just want, as we continue to, as we go down that path, we realize that we're not rebuilding people's roads, we're not putting sidewalks in, we're not doing these kind of things, because if we're going to spend $600,000 or $700,000 a year doing drainage, I think we'll be spending $600,000 or $700,000 a year till eternity. Okay, how did all of this come to be such a big deal? Is what I'm trying to understand.
Well, I mean, we're not going and looking for it, but when we find issues where the city, where we have water draining off of a city-owned road that is either going onto private property, causing damage on private property, we're looking to our engineers to find ways to fix those problems. We have those problems all over town. The influx of new construction, every vacant lot on every other road is getting permitted. They're tearing down trees. They are changing the pathways of water existing. Obviously, when there are private roads or one citizen putting water onto another citizen's property, that's one thing, and that's not something we're getting involved in. But when we are dealing with issues where water is coming off of our roads, and instead of some drainage ditch or whatever, it is just going on to other people's property, we're trying to fix those problems where we see them, and there's a lot of them out there.
So in your mind, do you think that we should fix drainage or we should rehab roads?
Both.
Well, there isn't enough money to do all that. So what's more important?
I think at the end of the day, I think roads are going to fix drainage problems when you rehab them. So
Okay.
I guess if I had to choose, I'd go with that.
Okay. So then I would, and I don't know specifically, and I don't really want to get into trying to manage your all stuff, but at the end of the day, it looks like we have some money, and I don't know what our next road project is, but it's taken us, 3 to 5 years, and at one point, Gina thought it'd be longer, but we've been lucky to get something like Osage Beach Road completed to rehab, okay? So I'm assuming it's going to take another 3 to 5 years, whether it's, I don't know, Malibu or some other, they're out there. Okay, there's plenty of roads that could be rehabbed. Okay, Lazy Days, whatever the case may be. Is it really critical that we spend this kind of money for drainage improvements and then continue to put those kind of things off? Okay, because how many times have we heard of complaints about Lazy Days and walking down Lazy Days and things like that? Well, if we could spend $600,000 or $700,000 a year in drainage, and again, I don't know these. All right, there was one I thought of, zebra drainage project. What's that one? Since I live near Zebra, I was curious what that one was.
Is that one of yours, I think?
It's $107,000.
That's right behind, Dick's.
That has been in and out of budgets over the last, since they built their bars.
Since Deerberg's?
They've
So for
been
10
in and
years,
out of
it's been in
budget.
and out of budget and we.
In some form or fashion,
So
that.
it's not a big deal, apparently. If we went for 10 years, nobody's taken us to court.
Yeah, now that he reminded me of this is the dance studio across the street there, and they're getting inundated. That's right. Thomas went out there with me on that one. They're getting inundated with water that's coming off the road there because there's no drainage on the other side of the street. There's plenty of drainage there up where Deerberg's is, but the other side, there is no drainage over there at all.
It goes down into their parking lot because they said 10 foot down below the street. I get that, okay? Put a big hump on their driveways and they go down the street. I mean, their customers aren't going to care for that, but that's a lot cheaper than $107,000. Just something to think about. I'm not trying to tell you, but all I'm trying to say is that it's easy to say, okay, we're going to fix all the drainage. Well, we'll be fixing drainage, as you know, it's all over town. We'll be fixing drainage at a rate of $700,000, which will go to $1 million in a heartbeat every year. And we're not going to get to the Malibus or the cases, and that's probably the wrong road. And so I just think that as we consider all these things, we should think about that, because I'm not convinced that we need to spend this kind of money on drainage. Those roads, they've been draining for years like that in any of those cases. I've got them in my neighborhood, and I'm sure these others are the same way. It sure would really be nice to do that, but is that the best way to spend the money?
I think to protect our citizens and their property, yes. I think there needs to be a little more priority on the drainage that we are putting into damaging people's property than the reconstruction of roads. I put the drainage higher than I do reconstruction of roads. And I think that we need to be aware of that, especially when one of us is a recipient of the water that's coming in our house or our commercial property. And yes, there's a lot over town. Why it's coming up and maybe just now coming to the surface. I believe part of that is the fact that we're not looking the other way as previous people that were responsible for that research did. And we're not looking the other way. We're looking at the way to fix it permanently, not fix it and put a Band-Aid on it. We've been doing that for too many years, so I support the drainage.
The one comment I will make, and I want to make sure the board understands this is not a situation where any citizen that has a problem comes up to Rob or me or Dave, and they say, here's our problem. We say, sure, we're just going to go ahead and take care of it. We vet these, we go out on site, we make sure that it is a situation where the city is truly causing the problem. There's been several where I've had to look people in the eye and say, I'm sorry, this is between you and your neighbor. This is not between you and the city. So we do our best to vet these and make sure that we are only dealing with the issues where the city is putting water on people's property.
Mike, I have a question, kind of lean toward what Kevin said about drainage. I think your roads might stay better if they drain better, but that particular project, that piece of property has been there forever and hasn't changed. Why is it all of a sudden $107,000? What about that thing costs $107,000?
Well, I'm not going to get into the specifics of the project here, but it's just the installation of some storm drainage. We're going to have to go across their parking lot to dump it into a creek that runs on the right-hand side of their property. But if you want me to go through the specifics of that, let's talk afterwards, and Dave and I can kind of walk you through that specific project if you want me to.
I mean, kind of, because, kind of go back to the special road thing. We went out and looked at 15 roads, we're not even doing any roads. Now we've got 15 sewer problems and we're going to do all 15. I don't see how that math works. So is there a way to prioritize these? Like, is zebra
Started to say a priority.
worse than Malibu? I don't think we can fix them all at once, right?
No.
So priority.
So I don't think we should just be lumping them into a category. We should probably be prioritizing.
Yeah.
The ones that I have here are the ones that we feel are the highest priority.
Okay.
And I'm glad you brought that up, Alderman Hoffman, because I owe you an explanation on private streets. So if there's no other questions, I'll give you guys an update on that real quick.
Sure.
So over the summer, we did do that. We went through all that. I took all that back to the Special Road District. And the simple fact of the matter is that the Special Road District does not feel like they have the funding to help us with some of these larger projects. There is one project in the budget there's two projects in the budget where we will have the help of the Special Road District. One of them is the Parkway Extension, which is kind of a carryover from the last couple of years. And then we also put money in to extend the sidewalk past Barry Pruitt, past the bank all the way to the corner there of 42 and the Parkway. And they are willing to pay the construction piece of that, and we pay the engineering. I believe it's a $154,000 project that Gina has already labeled as being Special Road District. Yes, it's right in the middle on page 65. But Justin, the simple fact of the matter is that we have to have them as our partner in order to do any of those roads. Now, I would say the 5 smallest roads that the 3 of us all went through, Twin Lakes, Young, those roads, private citizens have already went to the Special Road District, and they are taking care of that in-house. They are simply leaving it private, helping them pave those roads so that they have a nice, fresh pavement there, helping with drainage if they can, and they're moving on. But the larger projects, the Ava Road project, the Clearwood project, some of these other roads that are larger roads, longer roads in need of more TLC than just your Youngs and your Twin Lakes, they simply do not have the wherewithal to partner with us on those roads. And so there's really nothing I can do about that, unfortunately. There's nothing more for me to do about that. They don't want to be in that. I have asked them to come back to me on a couple of different times on any road project that they might be interested in doing in the future. I asked them again last Wednesday that, and I'm hopeful that they'll identify a road for maybe a future budget that we can partner on. But right now, you look at the top 5 or 6 roads that we had on that list, Justin, and they don't have any interest in assisting us with those.
That's based on you think that they don't have the money for it, basically.
Yes, sir.
That kind of brings me to where we're at with drainage. I'm not sure we have the money for that either. So maybe we should be looking at how they did it. Well, they got these things done, and they didn't do these. I'm just wondering if we're applying that same mentality to it, because I agree, Kevin, we should help all of our constituents, but we can't take out $1 million loan to do it, right?
Well, remember, what they're doing is not going to meet our design guidelines, and therefore we will not take those roads over. So those roads will stay private. But if we want to put a road in that is going to meet our design guidelines or come close to our design guidelines, then we're going to pay for it. And so there's your differences right there, or at least part of your
Well, the city does not use taxpayer money to a private road. They pay for or find third-party help to pay for, but we as a city do not. Your taxpayers go to city assets. So if they want to become a city asset, we have guidelines that they have to get it to a certain standard, and that is their responsibility.
Right.
So we're changing our philosophy. I'm like, whoa,
No,
wait a minute, we have to have,
I'm talking about their approach, how they budget their money, how they.
Well, Mike just said we have to pay for it. I'm like, no, in that case, no.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying to do anything. I'm just, again, I kind of lean towards, if we fix drainage, you might not have as much road problems, but I also don't think you can just lump it all in there. I look at, well, if they got 4 of their 15 done, how'd they get those 4 done? And maybe that's how we should be looking at drainage. It's just.
I thought Mike said that they do kind of, we're not fixing all the drainage problems this year.
No, he didn't lead out with, he had it prioritized, so, in conversation, I see where he was going with it, so.
The drainage projects that we have on the books for 2024 are all legitimate. And they are all situations where we, the city, is putting water that's coming off of our roads on a private property. However many are approved, we'll put a project together and we'll get it done. If they're not approved, then we will put them back on the shelf and try again next year.
But again, these are all based on this is your perspective. This isn't a constituent down there saying that this is wrong. This is what you believe to be right.
It's my perspective, it's our engineer's perspective, it's our transportation foreman's perspective. Yes, sir, as a team, it is our perspective.
Okay, thank you.
Michael, are there any grants available to do something like this and repairing the storm runoff?
You know, Phyllis, I've never looked into grants for
I just
stormwater.
wondered.
It's certainly something I could look into, but it's not something
That's that prevalent, I'm
that's
sure.
that prevalent, no, man.
But
Could be though, yeah.
I also see spending some of the money to fix the drainage problems, because if our water's coming off of our road and causing damage to somebody's property, and especially if we've acknowledged that issue, it's kind of hard to be like, oh, well, we'll fix it in a year or two, we'll see how much of your property it destroys before then. And that cost to us could be a lot higher than this would be to fix now versus if we
later.
damage their property more. It's kind of thought there too.
So I think this is a larger conversation, and I hear exactly what you guys are saying. But you don't live too far from it, but about 4 years ago, I got contacted by a resident that was right at the end of the, Villas of Grand Place. Okay?
Okay.
Right, and you go down, you come off the parkway, and you go down past them, and just as you get past them, there's kind of a dip in the road, okay? And there's a guy that lived right next door to it, I can't remember his name, all right? And water come running off of it. By the way, I don't know if this is in here or not, but it doesn't look like it. And water come blowing down off of it. It was eating stuff out. He was trying to put in a retaining wall. The Villas of Grand Glace had to clean up a bunch of gravel. They had decided that they were going to charge the guy above them, okay, who was just a private individual with a home. And so I got into it with, I started talking to Ed. And I don't know if that was Nick or you at that time, but I know that we may have been both before it was all done. But I got basically told, we don't have to worry about it. We're not responsible. Okay? Yeah, that's exactly what the response was. We're not going to do anything for this man. Okay? Because at the end of the day, it's just the way things are. We have sovereign immunity, that wonderful word. Nicole's not here. That you guys know how many times Ed used that thing. And so something happens in the last 2 or 3 or 4 years that all of a sudden we decided we have this responsibility. Okay? And so I just think that we need to somehow figure out what it is we're doing, because I will also say this. That's Wynn Road, am I wrong? Is that the name of that road?
Yeah, that's
So if Wynn Road was rehabbed, we might not have that problem, okay? And if some of these roads, we need to prioritize. I understand that along with the condition and number of people live there and so forth, there may be a better way to solve this through road rehabilitation versus just running around and fixing a drainage problem here and a drainage problem there. I'm not here, that's probably not going to be solved tonight, but it's something we should consider.
Although I will say, when they rehab a road, they would be redoing the storm drainage there too, correct? Kind of?
Yeah.
So that component would come off of whatever it would cost us to rehab the road if it had already been fixed, right?
Depends on the fix.
I doubt it.
Depends on
Yeah,
It-
that's why I don't design roads.
Well,
I don't understand all of it.
Using that one on Zebra, that road is already fixed. The road is in good shape, right? It's just,
It's okay.
okay. But the road is a problem on that one, so fixing that road isn't gonna help the drainage, but the next.
Yeah, there would be storm drainage put in if you fix that road, right, Dave? I mean, we put storm drainage in every time we put a road through. I mean, Osage Beach Road has ditches, it's gonna get storm drainage. What was the one we just did?
Industrial.
Well, the one before that, I'm sorry. Mace Road. Storm drainage was all put through there, okay? And that's what we do. We put drains out and we get easements and so it is a chicken and egg thing, and I'm not sure which is the best way, but it's something to consider as we start thinking about this stuff. And I probably want to go see some of these too as we go over time. I do have one other separate question. You guys can get back to that if you want, but I am not convinced, so I'm gonna ask this question. I've been watching the Outlet Mall or signal for 2 or 3 years. I'm sure Bob is very familiar with it too. And I don't really know what's changed in the last year and a half, but I haven't seen any problems with it. We went through a situation there for 6 months to a year where it was all kinds of problems. And although I realize it's old equipment, okay, we verified that a couple of years ago or so, I'm still wondering if it's a good idea to rehab that signal until they figure out what's going to happen with the outlet mall. Are we having consistent issues that I'm not aware of with the outlet mall signals in the last year or so?
Yeah, I've been out there a few times, Myers has, yes.
Okay, so what do you think we spent on that signal the last
I
year?
don't know, I've got the numbers.
I mean, if you're guessing $5,000, $25,000?
Oh, every time they come out, it's gonna cost you $2,500. So, that's the Aldermen charge.
Okay, just cautious that if we spend 70 there, we may be somebody may be ripping it all out and changing it all up here in the next 2 or 3 years, so.
The one thing I will say, sir, is that we were asked to do some research and training on streetlight stuff, and what you see here is the cost of the devices themselves. We'll be installing them ourselves.
Okay. And then this welcome sign, and I'll be done. This welcome sign, is that another welcome sign, or is that the one we've been working on all along? Because it didn't show carryover, so I wasn't sure.
Well, and I debated on how to, last year we had more of the design, we thought we were gonna have to purchase land, so that was in a different section. So yes, it's the same carryover project, now it's just the construction piece that will get done next year.
So it's not a new one?
Well, it's a new welcome sign, but the same new welcome sign we worked on.
It's the same one on this side,
Yes.
it's not the one, I thought
No.
this was gonna be on this
It's-
side of the side.
Where am I at? I'm backwards, yeah. Towards Key Largo, yeah, so you know exactly.
Down by Harley Davidson.
Yeah, Harley Davidson,
Yes.
yeah.
And for what it's worth, Mayor, the RFP to put that out is on my desk. I'll get that out later this week, so, for spring 2024 construction.
Oh, I'm sorry, there is one question. On the Highway 42 sidewalk, is that our portion, the 1.18?
That's a total,
There's corresponding revenue?
yes.
Okay, because I didn't see it.
And
but
if
maybe
you
it's
look
there,
on
so-
page 11, where my complete capital is, page 11, it might be more on 12.
Okay, that's fine, as long as
It'll
there's
show you,
revenue.
yes.
Okay.
Yep.
That's all I have. Fine, thank you.
And it's mainly a refresher, because I remember talking about it in a meeting, but I can't remember, what is the issue with the outlet mall light? I don't remember what
It's old.
It's very, very old.
but I mean, what is it doing? Is it going all the way down, or?
It will hold cars longer than what it needs to, throw it into a default. Anything will cause it, a little storm come through, or just heat, whatever.
Pulls cars
Whatever.
leaving the outlet mall or on the parkway?
Parkway,
On the parkway.
about all of it, really.
So I was trying to think, I was like, I don't think in the past couple months I've got even a red light at that light, but.
It's been working really well for a good
I was
while.
gonna say, I haven't stopped
I
that in a
don't
long
really have
time,
much
but
on
I
the
don't know.
other side.
Yeah.
Hey, one comment I will make, and Gina, this is probably my fault too, but just so you know, the 70 grand, that's for 2 traffic lights. That's for the one in front of the outlet mall and KK. So I apologize. If now all of a sudden now I'm
Maybe
like,
your
okay,
labeling is,
Yeah.
maybe the labeling I gave to her didn't say that, but that's 2 traffic signals. That is the cost of the parts for 2 traffic signals that we will install ourselves. No bidding that out, no need for an outside contractor to do that.
2 areas makes a lot more sense.
Yes.
actually, it's labeled right on the page 12, but not on this one.
I don't know.
We'll get it correct.
Any other questions before we move on to water?
Me. Hi, everyone, I'm here.
Hi,
I made it. Back to the outlet mall.
Yeah.
I know a lot of the issue has been the sensors, correct?
Yeah.
Have been needing to be replaced or recalibrated or whatever you do there. So the upgrade is going to do what? Replace those?
The sensors are in the ground,
Yes.
in the pavement itself. We're gonna bring up a camera system. It's gonna be one camera that watches all of it, called a smart grid camera. And then we'll replace all the old data inside the box, with your conflict monitor, here, all that will get all replaced, and we'll go to this grid smart system.
Okay, I think one of our biggest issues with that stoplight, which you and I talk about all the time, any car coming out of the outlet mall, taking a right, which is legal, right on red, the minute it hits that sensor, they will go ahead and pull out, yet that sensor still says, wait a minute, we need to stop traffic. So there'll be no vehicle there, but 20 cars going opposite directions will automatically have to stop because they'll automatically turn red, even though that vehicle trying to turn right, because the minute it hits that sensor, that vehicle's gone, yet traffic stops there, with no vehicles trying to pull out of the outlet mall.
Yes.
So that's been one of our biggest issues with those sensors is, why do we have a sensor for a vehicle turning right on the red? Out of the outlet mall, makes 0 sense.
And you don't want, we need to get away from the sensors on the pavement, because you do anything to affect the pavement, it affects your light. You know, if you do any kind of patching, anything, so we're going to a camera system. This is a new upgrade, that thing's 80, I don't know, I can't remember the year, I'm gonna say it's like 84, 85 miles, maybe. That might be the one at KK, I can't remember.
That's
what year it
KK, I
is.
think.
Maybe KK.
KK and
the
the
oldest
Aldermen
one, yeah.
are our two oldest in our, we only have 5 streetlights. But they're the two, street signals.
Signals.
Thank you, Gina. We only have 5 street signals. So,
But one of the biggest issues, which we're not talking about all the time, is, as I've stated,
Yes.
20 to 30 cars will be stopped going north-south
I hate
because a car pulls out to take a right on red, they'll take the right on red, and the sensor says, wait a minute, we need to now make these lights red, cars are stopped for no reason, there's no vehicle trying to pull out of the outlet mall.
Yeah, that's correct, and that's why we have Myers come down. We don't got the software to do any of that, you know, programming and all that. And it will be a more user-friendly software for us to do. It really is. It's going to be just like the light up here at Nichols and the one at Walmart. It'd be that smart grid camera system. That's what it is. We had a little bit of problem up here at Nichols, but it was all under warranty. They come down, fixed it, no problem. They didn't charge us nothing. But we ain't had nothing to add for, we've had it for 2 years, maybe 2 years up there, I don't know.
So,
year and a half.
So assuming we have people, are you saying that this kind of camera system gives us the ability to work on these in-house because of some of the capability we're building, plus the system itself in general?
We can work on it in-house, but there's a guy down here that sells them, that lives on
Yep.
HH, who's more than happy to come and work on them anytime, for free of charge. So we're gonna be pretty lucky
For how long?
on that system.
For how long, like for 20 years or something, or?
He's younger. He's younger than
You don't ask the horse how long he can ride. He can ride.
If we get a contract on it, that'd be great.
So,
All right.
Excuse me.
Water, page 67. Highlights, couple line items, I've gotten off track, but the dollar cards are good, and I'll correct that. Insurance settlement, I think Kevin, you went through this with fine tooth comb. We just got off the line. The insurance settlement should be the 23,000, and then we've got a new line in there that I've got to insert. So just the dollars are right, it's just on the wrong line. As far as increases, water collection fee, very minimal increase in water. I will be reviewing rates, and I know I've got a little bit on sewer to talk about that, and we'll be bringing the proposal to the board for some rate increases, which I had said we were likely going to have at the beginning of this year. And water still might have a little, because that's important to keep your reserves up, so I'll know more information. But at this time, the budget doesn't have the same anticipated rate increase that the sewer side does, because they're separate rate structures. Other than that, the transfer from CIT is this year directly tied to the debt. Debt service is the 173. So the CIT subsidizes the ratepayers for debt purposes for sure. Other than that, I don't have any other comments on revenue.
Gia, what are impact fees?
Well, you have a new customer. The impact you're putting on the system that's already built is the impact fee. That goes basically separate than rate. The ratepayers don't get the benefit of that revenue. It's more for expansion or capital. but it's a separate fee tied to the first and foremost impact you put on the system when you come in.
How did we almost triple that fee for 2020?
Well, we had Oasis and Teagantoff come in and they paid all their permit fees at one time, and that's why you see in your building inspection fees, these kind of impact fees, sewer, you'll see that, SDCs, because we actually had, a few big projects and they pay all up front. And so then when I estimate the next year, I just do a little more conservative and.
That's a one-time fee, right?
Yes, the impact fees a one time.
So does that mean that that money is set aside, I'm trying to remember, that's sewer development, I'm not sure about their sewer development. So is there water development fees that is being held?
It's, sewer development is a different philosophy, but
Right.
water, this is more of your impact, because you have sewer impact fees, you have treatment fees, you have.
So where's that money
SDCs.
utilized is what I'm trying to understand.
It can be tied directly to capital expansion.
Okay. Do we have a reserve for it now?
Yes, we keep, well, yes and no. Your reserves are just your repair and your maintenance. Water impact fees, they really just flow in, they don't subsidize the rates. They're just used for capital projects. So if water has an unrestricted balance, you could say it's fees that they've collected for impact that just not been spent on expansion.
Okay, so.
I
give me
don't
an example.
self-restrict those.
When was the last time we did expansion on the water system?
Well, we're about 99% built out. We have a few unsewered areas, if you'd call that expansion.
That's sewer though.
Or unserved, sorry, I meant to say unserved areas. So we still have a few unserved areas of water.
Okay,
So
so we're
that
just
would
using
be-
that fund towards those kinds of projects. Okay.
One question, Gina. This is to Mike, this is very macro. I know we talked about we might need to get into digging a well at some point. I'm just wondering, are you gauging our current water system to be in pretty good condition? Because what I fear is we start looking at, oh, we got this major problem over here in sewer, we're just gonna bang away at this, and then we kind of neglect the water system. How do you feel about where it's at?
I know you're asking Mike this question, but I'll say something. We have a current water master plan that was updated a few years ago. Sewer, it's been a while. And of course, I'll get on that soapbox that I think we need to, but water we do. Now, when and if that's ready to be updated, hopefully as we're doing projects, that looked at how much growth and what our water supply and those kind of things. That's what led to the Swiss Village well that was done. So we do have a master plan that's not too old. Now, whether or not how that's been looked at between Cochrane and, our different engineers, I can't answer that, but we do have a master plan, and that's kind of your steps.
Okay. Do you feel like we're gonna need a well in a year or 2 years, or where are you at with that?
Well, first of all,
Sure, that master plan will.
water and sewer are separate, so
Right.
while we might focus on sewer, it doesn't really affect water because that's all separate funds, separate revenue sources,
No, I'm
all of
talking
that.
about we get into trouble because maybe we we're not.
Well, that's a great segue for me to talk about O&M highlights, because one of the first things we're going to talk about is, we'll answer your questions. Unless there are any other questions on revenue, I'll move on to O&M highlights. So professional services is the first highlight I'll bring up to answer Justin's question here. We will continue the water study that Dave Van Lier started in 2023. So in 2023, we looked at the west side water, which is where Swiss Village is, where the 3 wells are, where we have the manganese problem, where we have a lack of redundancy because we only have the one tower in the air. In 2024, Dave's going to move to the other side of the bridge, and he's going to complete the water study for the entire city. And then at the end of that, sometime late next year or early in 2025, he's going to bring a report back. We'll bring it to the board for discussion, and we'll talk through what those changes look like. But the answer to your question is, we talked about the water treatment plant. That might be something that we still need to do. That's something that Dave and his team are going to have to analyze when they go through that report. We did do a study for the water treatment plant. Those results have been, we're going to get those results next week. They'll be sent over to Dave for him to include within his water study that he did. And yes, we have a redundancy problem. So obviously, at some point, we're going to have to put more water in the air on the west side. We don't have that problem on the east side because we've got 3 water towers. We've got all of our water kind of spread out on the other side. So to be determined.
Okay, but you're expecting you said more air and water, so a new tower somewhere.
Well,
Or is
right
it-
now-
are we not at 100% capacity with?
right now, if for some reason Swiss Tower went down, it doesn't matter how much water's in that tower. If it goes down, then we are out of water on the west side. So that's just a fact. So at some point, we will have to address that. Now, as far as water in the air on both sides, it's about even. 1.5 million gallons per side, Zach, is that right?
Yeah.
So we've got about the same amount of water in the air on both sides. The problem is it's spread out on one side and it's not on the other. And so that presents a redundancy issue on the west side. It's not, obviously it's never happened. And we've got a generator in the budget so that if we do have any power issues, we can overcome that. But
if we lost one on the east side, there's a redundancy plan in place, and if we lose the west side one, we're basically underwater.
Yeah, the hospital could help for a little while, maybe a couple hours, but then we'd be.
The other thing you have to consider on the other side is, it's not much, but we also have a line tied into Lake Ocean.
On the east side? Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, we have a line tied in there that we can, depending on tower heights, and it gets into a lot more detail, but there's
It's a
something there.
contingency.
There's something there.
All right.
And on the side, we're going
Again,
to
it
the
was a
hospital.
macro question, I just.
Sure.
Hey,
I appreciate you taking the time, because I think it's happening.
This time next year, we'll be able to give you a 10-year plan, here's the look ahead to projects you'll be doing on your water side.
That's what I was hoping here. Awesome.
well, and particularly with these 268 apartments, that'll be livable. And the Oasis, we're talking about a lot more demand on water on the west side.
All the water to Oasis is coming from the west side too, I assume.
Yes, sir.
So, but from what I gather, the most immediate problem we have is we've got wells that have plenty of supply, but they're not very good quality. Isn't that the biggest issue that we have?
The manganese that we're hoping
Right.
will have.
One's good, not one's not.
Right, and that's where I'm confused. We drilled a new well 5 or 6 years ago, right? Was that the one that was good and the old one we're not using anymore?
Yeah, so well number 3 is the one that we lean on right now.
There's 3 of them over on the west side.
There's the Swiss 1, 2, and 3 are all attached to Swiss Tower. Yes, sir.
Okay, so there's 3 wells there. So have we ever had a problem with a water tower going down?
No,
Okay.
we never have.
All right, so it's more a concern about getting water to the tower than it is necessarily having another tower, just to kind of get a perspective on it. Okay, that's all I have.
Let's do that here quick, and then you just,
Well,
and then it's
No,
all.
yeah,
we all slide off the lake and it's over.
Astral meters too.
But that's the fire chief side of me, that always worries about that.
Right.
All right, to continue with my own MI lights, I do want to make note of one other account, and that is 74330 repair to system. We will continue our meter replacement program in 24 in areas where meters are 10 years old or older. We're also seeing an uptick in leak work orders, 146 so far this year. That's a third more than what we had last year. But if you think about it, we're replacing all these water meters. The lines were installed at the same time the water meters were. And so this is just, in our eyes, normal maintenance that the water department is taking care of with very few problems. We're also going to begin next year a huge project, which I know, Alderman Rutger, you already know a little bit about this, but we're going to begin the lead and copper inspection program. This is going to put a lot of more work on the water department, on Zach and his crew, and it's one of the reasons why, and I'll talk about this a little bit more, we are asking for to add staff to the water department. This program requires us to identify what each house, the service line that leads to each house, what material it is made of. And they are requiring us to dig them up. We can't, Make sure you guys understand this. I can't just have Zach go to the water meter pit and look down in there and say, oh, yeah, look at that, it's PVC, and just write it down. That is unacceptable. They want you to expose the corp stop, and they want you to expose the connection from the meter to the service line that connects to the main. The resident has their own job in this. They will also have to identify their line. So this is likely a 3 to 5 year project, and there is no way we can get around it. These boys behind us here just went through a seminar the other day to kind of learn more about it. I sat through some MML stuff to learn more about it.
Say, those that went to MML, this was a hot topic.
So it's coming.
Who is they?
Yes, thank you.
Federal, EPA, starts all the way at the top, goes down.
So it's an unfunded mandate, is that what
Pretty
I'm
much,
hearing?
yeah.
So that every homeowner's gonna have to.
There's a single finger on my hand for that, but anyway.
I know, right?
I mean, what are they gonna do if we don't do it? They're gonna send the National Guard?
Cut our water off.
There are some shortcuts. There's some shortcuts that we've learned about that we're going to take advantage of.
So we're talking about every house from the city before it's all done.
Not just every house in the city, every house that's on our water system.
Is it only?
They have their
So-
responsibility, but we have a
Private
task.
citizens gonna have to pay. Sorry, I wasn't in and out.
No, I
The
know.
private citizen has to expose it too.
No, the EPA is requiring, DNR has made over, the EPA is requiring us that we look. So on every meter extension, there's a width, maybe 6 to 8 foot. They want to see that connection after the width. So we can go down and look at that with the hydro back.
They're trying to judge,
Or-
they're trying to judge how much copper or how much the lead lines and all the lines. Now,
no lead
fortunately
in our
for our city, we built, our water system's fairly new compared to other cities. So in the end, yes, we're gonna have to do some legwork, which I'm not making light of the work that's gonna be done over this 2, 3, 5 year period. But as far as the replacement and stuff, our water system
There's no
wasn't
lead.
built 100 years,
Some of
so
these cities that were the MML have got,
are stressing because they have old
they're not,
systems that
they're
will
not
have
gonna be
those
doing like us,
materials.
just verifying what's in there. They already know what's there.
And they
They're just
know
gotta-
next
They're just
step,
gonna go in there and
phase-
try to figure out how to replace that lead.
Phase 2 is
The city-
replacement, but
Well, and I apologize, I should have went to Manal, I guess, but if there's no lead in our system, which there isn't, okay, because it's been put in way too, there was no lead put in at that time, then the only lead that they're gonna find is on the private side of it,
right.
okay?
Completely agree.
And that's just not gonna be the city's problem.
But the city's responsible for reporting it. If I've got lead, they're gonna report it.
And I ask questions like, well, if I can prove that all of our construction was done after a certain date, can we get around it? Nope. You still have to do it. They are requiring it. Now, there are shortcuts that they're going to let us do. Like, for example, let's just say we've got a road and every home on the road was built within a 3 or 4 year period in the early 2000s. Well, they'll let me check the first couple, and if I can prove that all the other homes on that road were built to the same spec or using the same materials, then I can stop there. But I still have to sample each group as we go through it. Have to. But you
I'm
have
more
to
concerned about the private citizens who are gonna get this idea, they're gonna get this deal. You got a lead pipe, you need to dig it up, or we're gonna shut your water off, which sounds like where we're headed. Is that kind of probably where we're headed? Who's gonna take it, who do we report it to? DNR?
Yeah,
Well,
the
for the
DNR
state,
report.
I mean,
Right, you're gonna, okay.
trickle up effect.
Right, so then they're gonna go come tell somebody, hey, your pipe from that meter out there to your house is lead, you have to replace it.
And then there's an EPA mandate that's gonna come out next October 2025, that's gonna deal with replacement as well. And then that's not out yet, we don't know what that looks like or what EPA is doing with it, but,
That's
Great,
definitely
I'm
a
sorry to
phase
spend
2.
so much time on it, but that was mind-boggling.
oh, it is.
That's okay.
Yeah, it's been for years.
We don't like it either.
I do have one question back to, repair and maintenance. I don't understand how we are $230,000 under budget this year and budgeting $450,000 less for 2024. Was there something miracle that happened that?
Well, if you look
It's
at
so much less than we thought.
So if you look at the history, Bob, you'll see that we spiked between 22
See
and
all that.
23 and still in 24. So what is happening, Bob, is we had this mass installation of water system around the end of the century and the beginning of the 2000s. And now we are coming to a time where all those water meters that were installed are aging out or they are malfunctioning.
They
And
aged out this year, which is why.
well, they're aging out over the last 3 to 5, we're in the middle of that, you know what I mean? And so we want to make sure that we are accurately billing for water usage. And so we are replacing those meters, and then hopefully, we'll go back to regular maintenance and we'll be able to wait another 10 or 15 more years before we do another mass install replacement program.
It's not a bad thing, $500,000 almost. Budget
when
2023 to
Kevin first
2024, but I was curious.
When Kevin first started it, I think he estimated it'd take 5 years to get through them all. Does that still seem right, Zach? I mean,
And what
the
we're-
replacement,
And it might be on Kevin's mindset last year, into this year, was to replace the water meter and the PRV at the same time. There was some question if the city is still gonna maintain the PRVs, so that $224,000, we never spent that money that was allocated for the pressure reducing valves. And going forward, we would like to keep all the water meters at 10 years. So like, if there will be years with spikes, we'll spend a little bit more money on meters. There'll be years where not so many meters were installed and we'll spend less, but every year there will be a number associated with those meters that are older than 10 years. But that $224,000 was for the purchase of PRVs, which we never made because there is some concern about how we move forward with that.
So what do we have, 3,000, 4,000 meters?
low 3,000s.
So we ought to be replacing about 300 a year.
Right, easy math, yeah.
Okay.
Any other O&M questions?
Other than I just want to say I've had a lot of experience working with Zach with leaks and so forth, and one of the reasons you're fixing leaks is because Zach figured out how to fix them in his group. Okay, I'm sure that's not all Zach. I think that Rob, I didn't get a chance for Rob, but I think that their leadership in those two departments are invaluable, and I think that as we look through these numbers, we see some of that. It's not an awful lot.
All right, with that, I'll move on to capital highlights. So first I'll go over machinery and equipment. I'm not going to go through all of these items specifically. If you have questions about individual pieces of equipment, you can ask Zach about them, but there are several new tools being purchased to assist with valve turning, leak detection, system maintenance. You'll find a list of those items on page 70, right there in the middle, right above where it says total machinery and equipment. You can kind of go down through there and see a lot of what Zach is doing is trying to get better at leak detection, trying to get better at the valve turning. He's buying some new devices that are going to help him with some valve turning, and then just get better at system maintenance as a whole. The skid steer's also on here. As I said, that's going to be a shared cost between all three departments. And then moving on to vehicles, we are asking to replace 2 water service trucks. Justin, here's where we talk about what you asked about before. So I'll start with truck 52. Truck 52 is Truck 52 is a 2015 F350 with little over 74,000 miles on it. So on face value, it does not meet our test, right? 10 years or 100,000 miles. But what we've always said is we will look at these every year, and if we find something that is just not working, we're going to point it out to you. Well, in this particular case, unfortunately, this truck was in a minor accident in 2017, and we really didn't have a whole lot of problems with it for several years. But what we learned is that the frame is bent on it, and because the frame is bent, it does not really drive straight when you drive it down the road. So we've taken it to mechanics and said, is there anything we can do? And they're like, no, there's nothing you can do. We've spent, we're rotating tires on it. It's going through tires like crazy because it's kind of leaning to one side. So we are constantly rotating tires, constantly buying new tires, about a third more than the rest of the vehicles in our fleet. Additionally, it has become a maintenance hog. We've spent over the last 5 years, it's cost us $7,000 in repairs, with the majority of that over the last 2 years. And make no mistake, folks, this is the truck. This is the one that we have the Tommy gate on the back. This is the truck that loads all the chemicals, that distributes all of our chemicals, all of our chlorine, all of our fluoride to the various sites on the well houses. So it's kind of an important piece. So we're asking to replace that, even though it does not meet the 10 years, 100,000 miles, because we're going to continue to spend money on it because there's nothing we can do about the bent frame. Truck 56 is the truck that was normally supposed to be on our list, that was normally supposed to be sold at this time. It is a 2012 F-250 with a service bed, more than 125,000 miles on it. It does wobble a little bit when it gets out on the highway. You get it above 55, it wobbles a little bit. We've had the front end looked at, we've had the back end looked at, we've replaced shocks. No matter what we do, it still wobbles. So we would, we have spent a little bit of money on this one as well. We would prefer to just send this one down the road. It does meet the requirements, and we see it's been becoming more and more of a maintenance hog as we kind of go through here. So then on to wells and towers. The generator, and Gina, I know we had talked about this before, and I'll point this out in sewer. There was a mistake in the sewer department. The generator is supposed to have $100,000 in water and $100,000 in sewer. It's supposed to be shared, but the $100,000 for sewer was not in there, and that was left off. And I'll be correcting that with Gina before we get you guys the second draft of the budget. So on other things on wells and towers, we continue our cleaning program. This time we're moving on to Bluff and Passover. As we did this year, we're going to leave Swiss on the bid as an alternate. And if the board chooses for us, if you guys think that when we do this bid in the spring, you want to do Swiss as well, we didn't budget for it, but if that's what you guys want to do, you can. Swiss will be on the schedule for next year. So your all's choice. We can do it this year, or we can do it as we schedule it for next year. We do have some decisions coming with Passover. Passover is our smallest tower. And if you look on page 70 at the bottom there, a lot of that 232,000 that she's got lumped in under tower wash paint projects, a lot of that is to clean and maintenance the inside of Passover. Passover is our smallest tower over there. And while we do like the redundancy, once we do one of the loops that we have planned later in the decade, we'll probably not need Passover anymore. It'll be a glorified communications tower at that point. We need it now. Until we do that loop to kind of connect us, we will need it, but eventually it may not be necessary. And I'm sure this is something that Dave will address when he goes through his process with this project. So before I go on to major projects, any questions on operating capital?
Didn't we just wash Swiss Village this year?
I know we talk about it all the time, right? But we washed Swiss Village in 2022.
22, okay.
We put it on there as an alternate. We put it on there as an alternate this year because the board was just kind of tired of seeing all of the green on it. And so I just decided from now on, I'm just going to put it on as an alternate every year. And if the board wants us to do it, we certainly can. But we're not budgeting. We're budgeting to do Bluff and Passover. And Passover, most of that expense is interior. Right, Zach?
Yeah.
You exterior washing once a year, once every other year, once every 3 years,
It depends on where they are.
whatever.
Every 2 to 3 years.
The one in Swiss was horrible when it needed to be done. And I'm glad it got done.
Yeah.
It shouldn't get that far down the road. It's kind
A
of.
Swiss pet, it's not as tall and the air doesn't flow around like the other one, so you are naturally always going to have more mold on that one just because of that environmental.
It probably should.
So that one tends to come up on the list because of aesthetically worse, and it's shorter, squattier, and the more trees in the air don't flow,
And,
so.
just to be honest, it is the first thing you see when you come in.
Sure, which is why that one is washed more often.
We even in 2018 or 19 repainted it. And
Oh,
hoped that we would
Hope
use
that
some chemical
Some
or
different
some unique paint would work.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
the point, in case you're not aware, is we probably between painting and washing every couple to 3 years at the most, we're doing Swiss.
Yeah.
It's happened every 2 or 3 years, it still looks like that.
It looks so much better, you know,
Oh, yeah.
I came home and I'm like, what the? This is
It's just
bad.
And
amazing.
you didn't have to do it.
So if we ever put up a tower, we're gonna figure out where the trees and the wind go.
Right.
I have 2 other questions. One, on your tower that's gonna go obsolete sometime later this decade, let's say it does go obsolete, can anything from that tower be salvaged and used for a new tower on the west side? Any of the parts, any of the gear, anything?
Now, I imagine Dave's gonna look at it, but we need roughly 2 million gallon holding on the west side, and so 150,000 gallons went in. It's a little well, because 40 horse and 150 gallon tower, where we have 125 horse and 200 horses over here wells, and then the 1.5 million, so it needs to be, I would think, at a minimum of 500,000 gallons over here on this side of town to get the 2 million gallons.
So it just doesn't scale to.
Right.
My second question is, and it's gonna have to be blunt about it, which of the 2 trucks works better?
52 works better.
The 52 works better, so the new.
The one, we need the 1 ton. We can't get rid of the 1 ton, just the simple fact that we have to haul. Each well on the east side of town injects bleach at the well site itself. So the drum of bleach weighs 500 pounds roughly. So you need that 1 ton just to jockey the chemical around.
So you have to have truck 52.
We need a 1 ton.
Yeah.
1 ton.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. Thank you.
Any other questions before I move on to projects? Well, I did notice I put the highlight at different place on this one, but I did put some highlights in there about the hydrovac and how the water department is using that. Projects, there's really not much to talk about in the water, on the water side of things. The one thing, Gene, I will point out, I thought we talked about this, but if we're not gonna do Creek Cove on the sewer side, we're not gonna do it on the water side either. There's just no efficiency at all to do one but not the other. Those projects have to be done together. Because of budgetary issues, we dropped the Creek Cove project. So the board needs to understand that if you're not gonna do the sewer Creek Cove, then we're not gonna do the water Creek Cove either. When we do that, the most efficient and cost-effective way for us to do it is to do it
So
together.
Water Creek Cove has been removed.
Yes.
Yes. Runabout is in there.
Okay, I'm sorry, the water loop, okay. Well, then I apologize, the water loop Gulf Lane to Seabreeze, that project is a carryover. That project has been mirrored by some easement issues that we have with the school. We are in the process of trying to find a way around their property so that we can make that project work. This is the first of several water loops we'd like to do over the next 8 to 10 years. We are struggling to get easements to get that loop in place, but that is a project that I believe, Dave, is pretty much ready to go. We're just kind of waiting on easements on it.
Correct.
So,
Can I ask you real quick on that? So there was easement problems on the side, there's easement problems on this. Is that just from the landowner holding it up for something? Is that?
yes, sir.
That's it, that's all it is, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and I'm just wondering if there's any way we can help with that process.
If you don't mind, let's peel the onion back a little bit. So with the school, for example, I never thought when we did this was gonna be this golf view lane. I remember that was a pretty simple deal, but the school, I didn't realize was involved. So I assume this is the elementary school over on Nichols?
Yeah.
Okay, so what is it that we need from them, and why is it a challenge to work with the school? I think I know why, but go ahead.
Initially, we were, so the school was our backup plan. So initially, we were going on a private property,
Antler
Elk
Ridge.
Valley, Elk Ridge.
The Antler Ridge was, I think, the name of the owner, yeah.
After several months of trying to work with them and a few different things that came up, we finally gave up with them. And then we talked to the school, and they didn't like, we weren't able to come to an agreeable location to place the water main on their property either.
So were we trying to go down the middle of their building or the middle of their parking lot or something?
No.
We're trying to be out on the edge of the property?
Yeah, on the property line.
Interesting.
There is a If you're at all familiar with the property, there's, some ponds back in the woods, maybe an old hatchery or a series of ponds back there in the woods.
Probably a golf course, isn't it, maybe?
Yeah, but maybe, we kinda had to skirt around those way back in the woods and they didn't like where we were gonna try to run it.
So when did we start approaching the school about this, if you don't mind?
I'll say 4 months ago.
Is this also donated property to the school?
When we approach someone for an easement, the request is always that it be donated.
No, but I mean, they receive the property donated to them.
Yes,
right?
they do.
Yes, they did.
I'm sure he probably doesn't
Oh, I
know
see where
that.
you're at, so I'm like, they're not giving it.
He probably doesn't know that.
Did they give you an alternate plan, or did they just say no?
No, they didn't, there was no, we don't like this, but we'd be agreeable to this.
They're not that.
All right, thanks. They are still working with them. We are still hopeful that we'll be able to find a pathway that will work, that will allow us to complete this project. As you know, the dead ends cause us a lot of problem with chlorine buildup at the end of these lines, and the goal here is to loop these so that we can have, when we do have problems, it has less of an effect on our citizens if we have to shut down lines. Right now, when we shut down lines, because of all the dead ends, causes us a lot of problems. It ends up causing us to notify more citizens, sometimes have to do boil orders. Obviously, that stuff doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it's a major pain.
So can I, just for one last clarifying question, so would this type of project qualify for eminent domain?
That's always kind of the final third step that when legal gets involved, when
And I realize Cole's not
engineers
here
are
and that's his
negotiation.
baby.
They can't go any further,
But
that's the next.
Okay. I see where you're going. Whether it's eminent domain with the original one or the eminent domain with the schools, I don't know why we may need to consider that.
What exactly is this piece of gear? Because they're on city water, right? The school's on.
I assume so.
Yeah, it's gotta.
Yes,
Oh, sure.
So this is only gonna help them get what they're already getting from us, correct?
It's gonna assist them on making sure
Yes, the connection.
that their water source continues on even if there's an issue. I'm not counting the fact that the fire flow situation it'll assist on, which there is a great a need as far as that, to continue to supply a more efficient and more capability of not being an issue with it, but.
Well, and I don't know, this might be out of the box, but I feel like there's times when maybe some of the board can assist with these easement type things, these conversations and meetings. I don't know what your guys' process is to get that. I know I would be willing to help any way I can. Just, sometimes you might be able to get a little bit more love than you guys have there in the field.
So the other project that we have on here that I want to point out to the board is the Runabout Water Extension Project. We do have, as Gina has said, we're both water and sewer, we're up in the upper 90s as far as built out, but the direction that we have received from the board in recent years is get everybody on water that isn't, everybody on sewer that isn't. While we can't do the Creek Cove project, there is a smaller water project on Runabout that will take an extension down from the main that runs along the highway there to get water to some unserved homes down there that are within city limits. The nice thing about this project is that it also gives us access to all of the residential that are just outside of city limits on Runabout, and gives us the potential to add a dozen or so more customers down the road, whether they annex or not, they will have the ability to get on water if they wanted to. So that is us trying to follow the board's direction to get as many of these last few that we can on city water, on city sewer, and this will take care of one of those small pockets. We have several of these projects planned out every year for the next few.
So is there sewer already there, or are we doing sewer also?
Sewer is out to bid right now. That was in the budget for this year.
Okay, so we're, at the end of the day, we're putting water and sewer down there is what we're saying. We're just gonna do it different projects at different times?
In this particular case, that they have to go different directions because of where the sources are. And so it's just, it's a little bit more complicated, whereas with pre-code, it would all go together. But this one, there's some different issues that are already in place that make that not possible. So. And that's all I have for water. Unless there's any other questions.
I have a question, I just want to comment to go on record, about the connection issues with the school. I think it's very interesting that the school is not wanting to agree to what we're proposing, which benefits them on land they were given. It just seems very
I think we all know why.
odd.
Yeah.
On record, I just wanted to state that.
I hope Justin can help with
That's
that,
all.
because I won't be able to, I'm sure.
You will not be able to help with that one.
Yes.
I might
Get out of that
have
meeting.
I might have to
Land,
go away with a
but
wall.
They don't do it. Anyway, that's all, on record.
So,
All right, sewer, page 73.
you think we should take 5 to 10 for sewer, or?
What do you say, everybody agree?
It's an hour and a half, everybody always looks for a bathroom break about it.
Well, this is the big one, actually, so.
How about we start back at 7:15, that gives everybody about 7 minutes? Perfect. All right, there. Everybody go use your sewer system. Order, please.
So page 73 is the sewer revenues. Sewage collection, I did plug in a little bit of an increase. I did not write down the exact, it's partial year. Again, you'll be seeing something for that. I did a reconciliation of our rates. And I know we're gonna get into the transfers and the philosophy and stuff, but as far as the sewer and water rates together, CIT has typically had two pieces to this puzzle on sewer and water funding. One is retirement of debt. So when the ballot issue was passed and the ordinance for CIT was created, it was for the purposes of funding capital improvements, including the O&M of said capital improvements, which may be funded by issuing bonds. That specifically says it will be retired by the revenues received from this sales tax tied to the combined wastewater or waterworks and sewage system. So back when we had lots of, the principal of the bond still high, CIT transferred to water and sewer, first and foremost, the subsidy for the debt. So sewer always had the lower of the debt payments than water because we had bonded more on water. So historically, sewer, except for 3 years that I'll discuss here in a little bit, about 11 to 13% of the expenditures on sewer was subsidized by CIT. Now, up to the debt part, if it was over that on the debt part, then it went to a capital but basically just funded, and that was also a subsidy for the rate. So it kept the rates also low because ratepayers aren't paying the debt, CIT is. Well, over the years, as we were paying down debt, water still had the bigger debt payments, and sewer between 2018 and 2022, there were no CIT transfers to sewer because it just happened to work out that for cash flow. Water needed more of that CIT, one for debt, but two, we had some big projects come through, and so sewer, we for 3 years, which 18, 19, I guess 4 years maybe, I didn't plug it in the budget because it wasn't needed. Now, in the last couple of years, as you can tell, that changed because we had stuff come up. So when the rates were down, let me go back. So the theory behind CIT is one, it has to subsidize and pay off, it has to pay off the retiring debt. As you know, we're getting ready to finalize those. I believe this year, I think it's sewer that's got a year or so left for theirs, and then water we paid off. One of them's 25 and another one's 26 or 27. So we are coming to the end of the required CIT debt subsidy. This year's budget was interesting, and I know that we're going to discuss the expenditures, but let me tell you how I funded or how I balanced this year's budget and then estimated past years. So you definitely see a spike from the CIT. So again, historically about 1.4 to 1.9 million always come out of CIT, but mainly went to water more than sewer just because of the balance of the debt. So as you can see, in 2023 budget, we had a CIT scheduled, and again, a few years that we didn't. And then this year it spikes. So one of the questions Alderman Ross had asked me is my projections from 2023, or early this year in 2023, first cash flow, and my changes that I now present, there is a big dip in the CIT 5-year projection, and that is sewer. So there are a lot of capital, there's a lot of projects just based on what the department prioritized. There was things that I did take out based on my limited knowledge. Other than that I felt the department needed to justify to the board for their budget. But in the last 2 years, we have had unprecedented things happen in our O&M and capital in sewer. And so to necessitate balancing the fund, CIT was used. Now, I do believe it's the board's philosophy on how to use CIT, as long as first and foremost, it doesn't inadvertently change the intent of the ballot and everything that happened back in the 2000s. But CIT has always had some subsidy piece, including the debt for both water and sewer rates. So without a CIT subsidy and debt, and based on my limited knowledge of what we think the next several years in sewer would look like, you could easily triple your rates, because you're not, if the intention is not to subsidize CIT in any form or fashion on the ratepayers, you could theoretically see, triple rates. However, there might be an intent to always want to subsidize to keep the rates inside city lower. That's a philosophy question. Again, as long as I don't think it changes the intent to capital improvement. I do believe the intent to capital improvement was first and foremost water and sewer, because at the time, that was the big capital infrastructure that we were facing. Now, I will say with sewer, and Dave and Mike and everybody, they may have more input on this, but as we look in, first and foremost, we need to look at 2024, because we obviously need a balanced budget. But what looks like the next 5 years, I really highly recommend the engineers either updating a master plan type thing. What do we know it looks like besides what Mike does with capital? And I know I ask all the departments, give me your capital schedule. What do you think you're going to spend over the next 5 years? What do you think you're going to spend over the next 10? Well, when you get into lots of zeros, I say confirm, trust, but verify with some kind of, study, what is needed. And we've done that kind of with Tantera. So excluding Tantera and excluding the 8-point-something million that we may think we need over the next 5 years, that's where that cash flow changed that perspective. In other words, the reserves that we had in sewer, our trend drastically changed the end of 2021 into early 2022 to now. So basically, sewer has spent what we thought would last us 5 or 6 years of reserve for just O&M, we've spent. So if that trend continues, the one thing is, how do you either figure out what your master plan is and you go bond for new infrastructure, now that it's paid off, maybe it's time to up it. We know we have an expensive system, we know we have a large system, but we know we have to, or you raise rates or lower expenses. So I will be prepared to answer the rate question after we kind of figure out what this looks like. That will be coming to you another time, but I kind of wanted to explain that CIT and the changes. So what can I answer for you on that before we head into what we need to spend?
So basically, 50% of our expenditures are being covered by transfers from other funds, correct?
In this budget, you have a almost $2 million revenue incoming budget, and 5.6 of that is coming from transfers. Now, ARPA is a piece of that, but yes, you're borrowing some money from water, and you're unprecedentedly taken more than the 1.4 million, which over the years, the 1.4 to 1.9 is what's always come out of CIT to either go to one or the other. This year, it's just swayed to more, but then you add that $4 million.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If we want to raise rates, that's just correct, it's not something that has to go out for a.
No, rates, all I have to do is prove on why we need to raise them, and there are some considerations on how fast and poverty levels, but I will have more detail and more information on my recommendation of that by the end of the year for some kind of rate increase, maybe within the first quarter.
Okay, and when you said tripled rates, can you explain what you mean by that exactly?
Okay, so right now the rates are based on projection, some kind of growth projection. In addition to the expectation, we have always had a piece of subsidy from the CIT. So after this budget workshop, if the intent is, okay, once debt's done, no, we don't want the rates to rely on a subsidy from CIT, which keeps the in-house city rates payers lower.
Right. Okay.
If we are only going to rely on rates, which I don't think is, I think some kind of subsidy, again, that's a board decision. But I guess what I'm saying is, based on projections, not knowing what kind of master plan, but just like status quo right now on O&M, and you only want to make sure that your miscellaneous income and your rate sewer collection, those, and the interest piece that can go to your rates, you could theoretically triple the rates if you wanted that be the funding source to make the budget balance.
So if someone's paying $30, now they're paying $90?
Yeah.
That
is, I'm just telling you that. I was like, I'm not saying that's my recommendation.
No, but
I'm
you're
just
saying that's the math.
it would not be surprised to see that. There is, like I said, but that's where you can also weigh, it's like, how much of CIT every year do we want to keep putting into water and sewer, whether that's to subsidize to keep the rates for the inside city lower, which is some philosophies for some cities, or, just to give you an idea. Again, until I really read the numbers, but
So can I kind of look at this backwards? Like, let's say there was a number of rate that we had all come to terms with, that we were willing to increase it. Whatever doesn't make up from that increase has to come from somewhere else, such as CIT,
That's-
bond,
yeah.
correct?
For reduced costs, yes.
yeah, just like any business unit, to change your bottom line, you either increase the incoming or decrease the outgoing, or a combination of both.
Right, but we have several ways of doing that, as I'm saying. It's rates, it's lower cost, we've got
Well,
bond.
like I said, CIT was put in for the purpose of water and sewer. However, things have changed in other infrastructure. It does say it can be used for other capital improvements in them, but it's first and foremost as bond indebtedness. So if we're getting ready to be out of debt, then okay, this will be the board's decision whether you want CIT to continue to subsidize in some form or fashion once that's done. Or should we embark on looking at some kind of master plan or some kind of planning like we did with Tantera? What does our system need and what kind of investment does it need beyond the O&M, beyond the pumps, beyond the O&M? What other investments now does this system to maintain? And then the board either has to pay for that with cash, or they go out to the ballot and do another bond, which then would also then be tied into CIT. So that's the bigger picture decisions that need solved, but first and foremost, how do you manage what's happening with 24? But I think staff needs to have a serious look into 25 to 30 based on just preliminary numbers I've gotten from departments. Because when we're starting with millions, then we better confirm and deny what that millions needs and the priority list.
I would just say the more we can pay as you go, I'm in favor of that. And I think that's an avenue to look at, rather than to bond. Bond, you're gonna have to go to the public and get a vote of approval there. Pay as you go, you don't. We can develop that. But in order to do that, we have to have a plan. And I guess that's I realize we're on revenue, but it spills over into expenditure, and that is, you mentioned this quite some time back, as well as again tonight, but I don't see anything in this budget to reevaluate our plan, and that's what we need to do.
Well, you're right, there's not a specific professional line item, so whatever the capacity of okay, Cochran, how do you help us do that? And I think in this, and I'll throw another wrench that we're not gonna solve tonight, but when we do that, we seriously need to look at the SDC's schedule too. That is coming up 22 plus years, and it could have some future effects depending on what we do, but that's a whole other thing. But it's really just a conversation with, Dave and Cochran or other engineers that we have on, we already have. It's okay, what would this cost us? How soon and what do you need? It's beyond my knowledge at this point, but I think when you look at the capital schedule that I got from the departments and you have that many zeros, then I think it's okay, we have always paid money for some kind of study or plan to make, it's kind of confirming that. Not that I'm not saying staff doesn't know what they're talking about, I'm just saying, okay, these are bigger investments. We need just
The park has a master plan, the water has a master plan.
and it's been a long time since we've had the sewer redone, and SDCs would be part of that, which I know is a different funding source for a different purpose, but.
Sorry, what is SDC?
So SDC is your sewer development charge.
Okay.
Sewer development charge. And that piece, not to complicate, because I could talk about this and you guys will just glaze over. The SDC was a funding mechanism specifically for expansion that as units come on, they were paying the city back also for some of these same bond indebtedness. So I always had to balance when CIT first and foremost pays the debt of these water and wastewater bonds. The SDC also had that piece built in. So I made sure whoever ever gets my 20-year Excel sheet, good luck, but I made sure that I never double dip. So should we ever get challenged, by citizens right now, the SDC piece is still active. It's just as users come in certain areas, can pay the city back. So there's still that little piece, but it's not work, I mean, it's coming to the end, so.
That's fine, I just didn't know.
Yeah,
And
SDC,
what the SDC stood for.
Well, along with that, as we're delving into that, there's another piece here, it's a smaller piece, but it is a piece that we need to look at, and as another source of revenue. There's a source of revenue that we are not using, that we, I know you're doing.
Kevin and I talked about that.
You're doing the research, and we're starting down, and that's the plant, the money that's in here right now. We have 2.1 million in here under sewer plant expansion.
Plant capacity fee.
This year, in 2023, that fund was added a couple $100,000, or it's about 300 some odd thousand, most of that going into that. And then next year, 24, we're budgeting 75, but that.
Plus the interest it gains too.
Yeah, well, actually budgeting, well, more than that. And there could be more than that depending on the impacts of new stuff. Some of that, I believe, could be some funding that could be available. So it's, I don't know how much of that, but that's also a piece of
That's definitely the software, and what Kevin's talking about is right now we collect plant capacity fee, and our ordinance specifically dictates that plus the interest of that account goes for treatment plant expansion. Well, we don't know. I mean, obviously it was enacted as a fee for a particular purpose. So before we just go willy-nilly changing the ordinance, I need to research like what I can find from the past, because I have not had anything to do with this particular fee because we've not changed it obviously in a long time. What it was, how it figured what it needed to pay for, and should the board consider a plant capacity fee, but setting it up more like your SDCs by certain downhill to get to the treatment plant. So yes, we can use it for treatment plant expansion. So let's say the treatment plant had a $2 million expansion and we're gonna have to pay our 85% because we utilize 85, like goes out to the team, we would have that money. But what I'm interested to see is, can we have still a plant capacity fee, but it's tied to how the flow goes downhill. So maybe our main trunk lines. Okay, we gotta have main trunk lines to get to the treatment plant. Could that also, it's a thought. So anyway, not
well,
to be solved tonight.
When the original thing was set up back quite some years ago, there was concern about at some point, are we gonna run out of sewer capacity at our plant? Well, we are in good shape. There's a lot of reasons, we could go into great detail, but there's a lot of reasons that you can understand that our capacity is the same, but our usage is going down because there's more efficient things being done. There's more efficient things happening. I mean, that's the short of it. So the need or the concern for plant expansion with everything we know and the history we've had is less of a concern than what it was 10, 15 years ago when there was a lot of unknowns. And so I think that fund there doesn't need to just sit there and just continue to grow when there's not, I don't think there's going to be. I'm not 100% sure, and I know Gene and I've had it, but there could be some capping of that, or some of that being used in other areas. And I think at this stage of the game, anytime we can find a few extra nickels in the sewer, we could use it.
So what would be the next step if we wanted to look into the bond issue? Because we're just coming off bonds, correct?
First thing you have to do is outline what that bond expenditures are gonna pay for. And that's what I'm talking about, sitting down and like, what does that infrastructure plan that you're gonna need over the next few years that we need to take out a bond for, or go to the people and ask for. So the first step is really identifying what that list of projects or list of assets are, not just O&M. I mean, I would not bond for O&M, which we can't, but that'd be like, it's like going to the grocery store with credit cards. Like you're eating that up. So O&M needs settled. We need to get our reserves and everything back to handle O&M. But really, it's like, what are those infrastructure pieces? What are all those lift stations that it's time to rebuild? We've paid off these bonds. It's several decades. It's like paying off your house and now it needs updated, or now it needs a new foundation or something. So what are those tangible assets that you would decide should you borrow or pay as you go. And I really think that needs to happen now. Going into discussing what the 2024 projects and what we should pass or not pass and how you want that effect. To answer 25 forward, I do believe that's the next step. And Dave, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, what I'm missing. I don't want to lead you guys down, but identify what the next 5 years, if we really are saying we are turning this kind of corner, why are we? And what does that look like? Just like we've done with Tantera, we're not even addressing the 7-point-something million in Tantera. Determining how that ends up, I agree, we should set that aside, but there's our own system. What does it look like?
I'm not saying we should bond, but there could be a better time. We're literally coming off of the bonds, and everyone knows that the sewer's a big problem.
We have a big system. It's an expensive system. We knew that when we built it. And you're always going to be taking care of your big expensive system. So where are we at in that, and what does that look like? So I think it's figuring out what it is you need to pay for before you figure out what you have to pay for.
You done?
Yes.
Okay. So I agree with Kevin. We need to pay as we go. Okay. The sewer system should pay for itself eventually. Okay. And we were fairly well doing that, although I realize now that we've been subsidizing it, and it's just the way because basically what happens is how much money does sewer bring in or water, okay? And then we spend so much money and whatever's left over, as long as there's enough for the bonds, we just paid it, okay? And we were lucky enough we were, okay? We were lucky for quite a while. So, by the way, water more than pays for itself. We get, that's not exactly a profit center, but it definitely takes care of itself. But the elephant in the room here is operations and maintenance, okay? There's $5 million evaporated from the 2027 forecast in CIT from January 31st till today. $2 million of that is in Tantera. $3 million of that is in operations and maintenance. Am I off, Gina?
That is a very fair statement.
All right.
Yes.
So I do not know what's going on with operations and maintenance, but to give you one little perspective, the repair of the system. We can talk about all these different other things and so forth, but if you look at the repair system line, it is absolutely out of control. Okay?
What line is that?
Page 74.
Halfway down. We, between 2016 and approximately 2020, we were averaging around $320,000 a year to repair a system. Okay? Then it jumped to 465 in 2020, 577 in 21, and then it was 1.45, $2 million, and we're hoping that it gets back down to 1.6. Okay, is everybody following? Am I way too far ahead of it? Sorry.
No, I couldn't find the line item.
Right. So depending on how you look at it, the math, somewhere around, I don't know, 500-600% of increase in one line item in 3 or 4 years. Okay? And if anybody wants to tell me that we just can't do anything else, I tend to disagree. Okay? I don't know anyone that would be working out in some other place of business where a major line item like this was going up 500 and 600% that would say, there's just nothing else we can do. We just got to keep going. Okay? I asked the question the other night was, we planned on spending a whole bunch of money and then it was just going to fix itself. And I heard, no, that's not the case. Well, then that just means that the rest of that $5 million, whatever it was, $10 million that was in those reserves in 27, it'd be gone by 27 or 28. Okay? Because that's just the way we're tracking. Now, we may get lucky and not have to spend $2 million out of Tantera, but something has to change in the operations of our system, period. Okay? Now, if that means that we have to triple our rates because no one else can figure out how to run a system any cheaper than $2 million in the line item repair of system, so be it. Then we're going to have to triple some rates. Okay? Either that or we're never going to fix a park. Well, the splash pad will get in and there'll never be anything else done at the park. Okay? And that's just the reality. All right? And I'm not sure what the answer is, but I think as we start considering all of these things, take a look at those numbers and say, really, what has happened here? Okay? Because there is no explanation other than it just costs. I've asked the question many times. All right? And so, if we don't want to have a triple of our rates, then we just might as well give the park up. It's just, we're just not gonna have anything. We may get the splash pad in because we figured out how to do that. We'll be done, okay? There's just no other way out. That's just the way it is. And so we've got to find something different. And I'll leave it at that.
I do want to, and second the rate, so for those of you who've not been on the board, we have been changing our rates slowly, but at one time you went through phases, and I'm talking just past boards, like, no, we don't bring us something to double digits, figure that out. And so you went through this phase where they were okay with subsidizing this. Now, I'm not talking about the expense side, because I agree. You either get your expenditures under control or figure out what's causing the outliers here. That's one deal, but on the revenue side, that was just kind of philosophies back on the, back in the day too. So it morphs based on that philosophy, but, well, that is.
I believe that one thing we, in my opinion, that we're looking at is, why has that increased? Okay, and in macromanaging, which is what this board needs to do, we don't need to micromanage. In the macro management of this system, if you can just think back, some of you weren't here, but if you can think back 3, 4, 5 years, when things we weren't doing as much, what's happened over the last number of years is we have identified time after time after time things that were not getting done 3, 4, 5 years ago. We're finding systems where there's supposed to be 3 pumps and there's only 2. One of them's been broke for a while. Why that was done, I don't know. I have a lot of, thoughts on how it could be. It could have been some of the philosophy of some of the management that we had in the departments or within the organization. That's like, oh, well, there's 3 of them down there. We don't need 3 pumps. We can get by with 2. Don't worry about it. Whatever it is. And now what we're trying to do is we're trying to play catch up, and we've been doing what we should have been done, or what should have been done years ago. And thank God we have some crews that are out there that are willing to get into the ditches and find the problems and bring them to us and say, hey, there's supposed to be 3. There's only 1 that's working. We got to get all 3 of them up and running. Now, we're not going to fix what hasn't been being fixed correctly overnight. I don't know if we're going to get it back online in a year, or if it's going to take us 2, 3, or what it's going to take us. But we have to get it back online. We have to get the system. At one point, it was brought to us to get a bunch of outside stuff done, or outside work done, which is a little more expensive, rather than using our staff, which is maintenance staff, not construction. They're maintenance people. That's what we've hired them as. And so I don't know. We have to find the funding. We have to find the funding, because I don't think, I can't see us cutting the operation, cutting the expenditure down. It's not, I don't see them bringing wasteful things to us. And I think that we're going to have to find the revenue. And I think it's a combination in my book, as far as some from CIT to subsidize the rates, and some with increased rates.
And my rate review is only as good as the best estimates in a 3-year period. And I will tell you, my estimates were not real conservative, but it was based on growth factors from history. Now, I always say to my accounting students, there's a reason the rear view mirror is lower than the windshield, but you have to use your rear view mirror. Well, a lot of times that's what you have. So there's no leading indicators that gets to me on what 25 or 26 looks like. And I think that's whatever shifted faster than I was able to even include in the rates, because again, my rate review is only as good as the data that I collect. And so that's why I say, how do we take a better picture of, one, figuring out what happened? Is this just a blimp? Yes, just like everything, nothing will ever go back down. When are we going to get over this hill of O&M? But also the capital expenditures that I see forecasted, and it's like, okay, I need to make sure, are those things rates should be covering, or are those new expansion stuff? So again, I think there's some data that will make that rate piece. I agree, it should be, and it may take a little bit, but for me to get good rates, I can only, so.
Just to finish up on where I was at, I want to make sure it's understood. It is not staff's problem that created this. I want you to know it's my opinion, it's not your problem that created this. It's your staff that we have now that's helping us to get out of the hole. So, and I want to fully support the staff that's trying to get us out of the hole, not kick them while they're down. And so that's where we need to support them in every way we can to do that. And if some of that is the fact of getting an outside source to help evaluate where we're at, we tried to do that just recently at a board meeting and it was voted down. We tried to get an outside source to do that, and it was voted down not to do that. And I will tell you that that's going to come back to the board at the, not the next meeting, but the following meeting to reevaluate, to reconsider that and reconsider that evaluation process of hiring a firm to look at all the water, sewer, and transportation departments and see what help we need there, because we do need to do that.
I'll say this, we do have an aging system, and I'm just doing some quick figuring here. Back in 2020, our actual budget for repair of the system was $464,000 for the entire year. On our Aldermen meeting this coming Thursday, with two projects, $383,000 for the sands, round numbers, and you have $172,000 for purchase multiple sewer pumps. So you have $555,000 for two projects. And in 2020, you had $464 for the entire year. We have an aging system that, I'm sorry, you're just gonna need to repair. It's time.
Roger, I agree. By the way, I think you guys are doing awesome. And it's noticed that there's been an improvement. Things are getting done. I know Mike being over there all the time has really helped. I agree with you. I think we should bring on a specialist. This is no way looking at Dave or Mike or you saying you're not doing a good job. I think the sewer system is very complicated. And to me, it's no different than when I was in the military. We had a CTM, a crypto guy who managed our crypto gear. But when we pulled into a port, there was a contractor who showed up, came in and specialized in this little system, or this part of the computer, whatever it was. I agree with you, we should find that person to come in and help them, not just with the problem now, but with the master plan moving forward. Maybe they're here for 6 months, I don't know. What I'm concerned about is why are we gonna lump in transportation, water? Why don't we just bring in this specialist for just the sewer?
Alderman Hoffman, let me clarify. I think you're talking about two things as one. So what I'm talking about is working directly with the engineers who create master plans that's just for sewer.
Okay.
And maybe that will have an O&M piece of like, what happened? Is this just some outlier years? But then what Kevin's talking about is the public works study that was about operations. Do we have the right type of operations too? So those would be two.
Yeah, they are.
Two things that you're
correct.
talking
There are two different things. I think we need to do them both. One is the combined to looking at the operation, but the other one is the master plan looking at the sewer.
The system and what we need.
So there's two different.
This specialist, to me, we find the best person who would bet on this kind of system in the country if we have to. And we bring that person in to help us with our problem and to, just to give these guys support to get the system going. I mean, I think they're both great at their jobs, but I think this is a different animal. I think it needs a specialist. I know I would feel more comfortable having one here to help them. It's also a good way to say to the public, look, we brought in the best guy. We're on it. We're going to fix your problem. And I am concerned that we're kind of throwing the dart at the bullseye, hoping it hits. And I think I support moving forward with having that all of them, the public works thing. I just would like to see the sewer done first, and then the next domino will be that.
One thing I'll add, when you said I did not put any extra engineer dollars or for that. Let me get with Dave and kind of brainstorm what the sewer, and for draft 2, I'll have that answered at least. So.
Is it fair to say, or am I wrong, that one of the majority costs that we're looking at with sewer is Tantera? As far as, no?
There's only a good, and I'm sorry, I got Mike off schedule because I want to talk about revenues and understand the philosophy of CIT, so I might get to that and maybe let him go on and do his O&M, sorry.
Oh, you're
I
fine.
needed to talk about all that for you guys to understand when you're deciding what this budget looks like. I wanted to make sure you know, how to use the cash flow and that kind of stuff.
I would just like to qualify my comments if you can. That was not a reflection of your group and the folks out in the field. First of all, you guys, there's very little, how would I say, experience and knowledge. Yours is probably the most of everybody combined, okay? And so that is, anytime you've got that kind of newness, there's gonna be some inefficiency. I completely get that, okay? But to your point, Mr. Mayor, so there's a repair pump line in here, okay? There's the sand station, I thought was a capital project. Am I wrong? Is that in repair of system?
That's capital.
That's capital. So those things don't even affect repair of system. Okay? So make sure we got apples to apples and understanding that. I don't disagree. Those are being funded, okay? In a different way, but still repair of system is up 5 to 6 times more.
Okay. The aging system though, is it fair to say that stuff gets older, it needs to be fixed more often, then the longer we wait, it's gonna cost more?
Sure.
That fair statement?
Sure.
Yeah. If you guys are ready, I'll get started here. We've got several different sections. Obviously, we're gonna spend a little bit more time on sewer, but I do think it's important that you guys understand the revenue side, and there's a lot of questions going on here. So we're gonna start sewer a little differently. I'm gonna talk a little bit on the front end about some key statistics and top issues with the department that are affecting the budget, that are kind of key leading indicators as to why we're having the problems in operations and maintenance and having some of the problems that we're having with having to spend so much money on capital expansion or rehabbing existing stations. So I'm just gonna start on page 1, right there where it says after hours call. So as you all know, Public Works, the sewer department works from 7:30 a.m. till 3:30 p.m. And then all the calls roll over to 911, and the 911 operator calls our sewer tech out from a phone that a take-home on-call phone that they have. So I did a real quick comparison here of 90 days. If you look back to 2016, between August 1st and October 27th, there were 33 work orders generated through citizen call-ins and another 40 work orders generated through our SCADA system, which is when a station calls us and says, hey, you better get somebody over here or else this is going to overflow. That same time period this year, there were 77 work orders generated through citizen call-ins and 177 generated through a station calling us out. So, and to keep in mind, this is only from 3:30 p.m. until 7:30 a.m. the next morning. So you can see, Richard, you just talked a little while ago about the difference in cost in our repair to system account. What was it in 2016 again? It was like $300,000?
16 it was, I'm sorry, I had the notes here. I think it was around 260 or something, yeah.
Well, this is a good indicator that's telling you why that was the case. We were not getting that many after hours calls. We were getting less than 1 a day at that time. In 2023, it's almost 4 a day. It's like 3.82 if you do the math. So there's a great leading indicator as to why we've seen so much change in our repair system. We are reactive right now. We are not doing a lot of preventative. We'll talk about that in a minute. Our system currently consists of just under 1,300 total pumps, total pump stations. Since July of 2022, 297 preventative maintenance work orders have been done in that 3-year period, when we should really be visiting every station at least once a year. There are 639.6 miles of force main in our system. We've identified 265 miles of that are ductile iron pipe. In the last 20 years, 0 miles have been inspected and cleaned. There are 103 plus miles of gravity sewer in our system in the last 20 years. Only 20% have been cambered and cleaned, and that's the 20% that the board approved about a month and a half ago, so that project is ongoing right now. There's about 96 miles of pipe in our system that we don't know the type of, so that's just one of those things that's an unknown. There could be more ductile iron in there, or it could all be plastic, we don't know that. Sewer line inspection and cleanings were put on hold in the 2024 budget because of budgetary issues. Industry standard is to inspect and clean all sewer main every 5 to 7 years. So obviously we are way behind on this. So what this budget in 2024 is going to do is it's going to say, okay, fix the things that you know about, but don't look for anything else. Don't look for anything else, but fix the things that you know about. And listen, I know that it is a budgetary issue, but if we follow that philosophy, it will come back to bite us eventually. Moving on, condition of the largest 88 stations in our system. I want to remind everybody that we hired Nathan over the summer. His previous job was with the company that we buy our pumps from. So the assessment that I'm going to talk about here, he did it. This is the guy that did the assessment when he was working with municipal equipment. So we've got a little bit of an ace in the hole there. So 25% of the pumps in our lift stations are either missing, broken, or have broken soft starts that make them inoperable. As a result, there are 25 of these 88 stations are currently running on one pump, no redundancy whatsoever. 40% of these 88 stations currently have extensive corrosion and pipe degradation. So that tells you a little bit about where we sit with the biggest 88 stations that we have in our system. And I want to make something perfectly clear, because I think people tend to consider, well, we just spent all this money on pumps last year or the year before. Remember, these 88 stations, some of them are duplex, some of them are triplex, some of them have 4 pumps in them. The pumps that we have bought over the last few years, we can account for those, we know exactly where those pumps are. But it's the other pumps in our system that are failing that still need to be replaced. So you have to keep that in mind. Under miscellaneous, the only thing I really want to go over is the average number of employees. What I did was I went back to the summer of July 2020 and went forward to July 23, and I just took how many employees we had in our working for us, and then took that all out and averaged it out. And if you average it all out over that 3-year period, you've had 4.65 employees working for you in the sewer department in that time frame. Sorry about that. Lost my breath there. Obviously, this is a department of 11 employees. So essentially, for the last 3 years, even though you've had peaks where we've had a few months where we've been fully staffed or close to it, for the majority of the time, you're working with half the staff that we are budgeted to have on a yearly basis. So keep those factors in mind. So just real quick, top 4 issues that we have in the system with the sewer department right now. Number 1 is pump inventory. I just said it to you guys. We pay for pumps out of repair to system. That's where we pay for pumps out. Pumps are considered part of the system, and they are paid for out of operations. That's not a capital expense unless we rehab a station and we include pumps in that rehab. So yeah, you're going to spend a lot of money and repair the system to get yourself out of this 25% missing, broken, or inoperable hole to get us back to where we need, so that we are not dealing with the stress of no redundancy in 25 of these 88 big lift stations. So we're not dealing with extensive corrosion and pipe degradation in 40% of these stations. Number 2, pumps. Sorry for the error there. Pumps in wrong stations. So what I'm saying here is that over the years, especially over the last 3 years, our staff is trying to make sure that we don't spill sewage on the ground. So if they know that they've got a 20 horsepower pump in a station down the street, they're moving it, and there's 2 pumps in that station, they're moving one of those pumps to the station where it has no pump. Now, in the short term, you do what you have to do, right? But in the long term, that's not the way to operate, because each pump in each station is supposed to work off of a specific head pressure. And so when you move those pumps around, not considering those factors, then you're putting more wear and tear on the pump, you're putting more wear and tear on the plumbing. You're, long-term, you could be causing more stations to airlock and just causing more maintenance on the station. So one of the things that we're doing, and we started doing a few months ago, back when Nathan came on, was any station that's missing a pump, we're doing a pressure test on that station to make sure that when we go back to our sales rep with municipal equipment, we're saying, listen, this is the pump in there, and this is the pressure test that we use. Please make sure that we've got the right pump in there, and if we don't, let me know, and let's make sure we get the right pump in there. So those are really the 2 biggest issues that we're dealing with right now, and then of course 3 and 4, personnel and experience, as we've talked about. So I'm going to move on to O&M, let some of those statistics sink in, because those are some pretty stark realities about our system and about where we sit right now and how hard it's going to be for us to get ourselves out of that hole. So just a couple of really quick highlights from the O&M. Professional services. Until we can get a handle on maintenance and or expand our fleet to include more resources, we're going to continue to lean heavily on private pumping services. We're going to talk about the small pump truck a little later, but we've only got the one small pump truck, and we've got a hydrovac that can pump for us, but it's shared by 3 different departments. Now, I'm sure you guys realize this, but sewer problems don't just happen one at a time. When you have a system that has 1,400 pumps and over 600 miles of sewer main, they sometimes happen 3 or 4 at a time. And if we've got a pump truck at one location pumping out a station, and we've got another station across town that is overflowing, and Zach is using the hydrovac to install water meters or find a leak, then we're calling Amos, or we're calling other vendors in the area to help us with pumping. We're going to spend a lot of money. We're going to spend over $150,000 on private pumping this year alone. That is far more than we've ever spent before. And we don't have a choice. If we want to keep sewer off the ground, we're going to have to continue to invest in those services, or we're going to have to buy more than one pump truck. I mean, that's just the reality there.
Can I, real quick, ask you, $190,000 was spent on those pump services, you said?
$150,000 plus.
How much is the vehicle that Zach is overusing, putting water lines in right now? How much is that going to cost?
The hydrovac? Yeah. $500,000. Repair the system. This goes back to, again, the statistics that I brought up. Until we can start to make headway on preventative maintenance, we're going to continue to spend heavily on reactive maintenance. The $2 million you're spending in repair the system is the purchase of pumps and the purchase of all of the parts that his guys use when they're going out at 2 a.m. to repair a station, or 2 in the afternoon to repair a station. Without us getting a better handle on prevents, that number's not going to go down. All right, so that's all I have for highlights on O&M. Any questions on O&M before I go on to operating capital?
Sorry, I wouldn't go that long, but you had such a momentum going. Sorry.
What all comes out of repair of the system?
So anytime that we have any expense related to a station that has to happen, all of the little parts and pieces in the electrical panel, all of the plumbing parts in the station, all of that for 1,400 stations.
The pump itself?
The pump itself as well.
Oh, we had a separate line item for the pumps.
Pump repairs we do, but if we buy new pumps, then they go in that. Because the new pumps, assume they get
The new
used up.
pumps comes out of repair system?
unless it's for some capital expansion or part of a new rehab. Inventory, basically your inventory.
Yeah, inventory.
So the mayor had talked about that 500 and some thousand. That 172 is coming out of this account because those are pumps and some parts related to the system.
Okay.
All right, I'll move on to capital highlights then, unless there's any other questions on O&M. Machinery and equipment, you'll turn to page 76. And so we're talking about a lot of the operating capital items there. So machinery and equipment, bypass pumping, we spent about $60,000 this year on bypass pumping, mostly related to a couple of different stations. A lot of that was Rockaway. This is something that we feel like is going to be a huge asset to us, for us to have. We have so many stations that we do not have the ability to bypass. And as we continue to work on these stations, we need to have some way to allow our guys to work in that station, but to get the sewer around it. And so a bypass trailer pump is a great way to do that. Owning one would save us the cost of renting these over a long period of time. We feel like that would be a great investment. New sewer camera. Now this is different from what I talked about when we do cleaning and cammering. That is a sewer truck or a bigger camera system that can go hundreds of feet into a sewer line and do a lot of cammering. This is just the camera that we use when we have a problem that we can't see and we know it's there and we need to send a camera up a sewer line 30 feet, 50 feet, whatever it may be, so that we can say, okay, we've got a break here, or we know we've got a clog here. The camera that we use right now is just too grainy. It is not doing us any good at all. We've sent it off. We've had it repaired. We've spent a lot of money on it, as I indicated here, over the last 3 years. It needs to be replaced. And so the cost there, that $95,000, that is, and by the way, Gina, there's only one sewer camera. I'm not sure why it says 2 there. We also only want 1 trailer pump. So if that was my fault, I apologize. But that is 1 trailer pump and 1 sewer camera.
A sewer camera costs $95,000.
Yes, sir. And then of course the skid steer, which is shared among all 3. I also put it here. So moving on to vehicles, we're asking to make 3 changes to vehicles in this department. The first change, truck 62 is our small sewer pump truck. It has a little over 58,000 miles on it. In the last 2 years, we've spent more than $22,000 on this truck. We've replaced the motor, we've replaced the transmission, and we've had the pump rehabbed 8 times. Essentially, every quarter, the pump goes out, and we have to send the truck back in. We lose the truck for 2 to 3 weeks, and what do you think we're doing anytime we have a station that needs to be pumped out while that truck is in the shop? Well, we're calling private plumbing contractors to help us pump that out, because again, we only have the one. And then truck 71 is a 2012 F-350 service truck with 93,000 miles on it, and the transmission is starting to have problems. This truck is running. All of these trucks are running. All of these trucks are being maintained. The cost of maintaining them, though, is starting to get excessive. We've spent about $5K on this one over the last 3 years. We would like to replace it with a new one. Truck 50 is a 2017 F-250 with only 28,000 plus miles on it. It's in good condition. We don't want to get rid of this truck. We want to take the bed off of it and put a service bed on it. As you know, we have a staff of 9 techs. Right now, we don't have enough vehicles, service trucks, to pair them up 2 at a time. We only have the 3 service trucks. What this will do is give us that 4th service truck, so we can go 2, 2, and 2, and then have 1 floater that works on other things within our system. So that is the plan there, is to convert that into a service truck, so we have a total of 4 service trucks. All right, so that is the highlights For capital, operating capital, before I get into major projects, any questions on operating capital, page 76, sorry.
What do you mean by transmission is starting to have problems? Like, is it just not going into drive? Is it?
Reverse.
Won't go into reverse?
No, it goes into reverse, but slips.
Slips.
We're gonna take it back in and have it looked at again. But again, the transmission was just replaced last year, and we're already starting to see problems with it.
Who did the work on it, you know?
I'd have to look that up.
It shouldn't be going bad.
I can't remember the vendor, but I can look it up.
I mean, I think we should look into that, because if it was done a year ago, the transmission is just going out, they might have done a good job.
And I presume no warranty?
No, but there's other ways we could lean on them. I mean, 1 year for a rebuilt transmission? That's, they did.
My dad's buy it from the junkyard.
Huh?
My dad's come from the junkyard.
Well, we might have paid for junk or paid premium, they got junk too. I'm just, if we know who the vendor is, we know how much, I would like to look into that before we, go buy a new one just to see. But that was my.
Well, just keep in mind that this is the truck that whoever the on-call person is using in the middle of the night to pump sewage from 50 foot down a 45-degree angle hill up to the truck. It'd be one thing if we were pumping these stations right beside the road, but all of these cans, as you guys all know, are all down by the water. And so it's not just one hose, it's connect 3 hoses together and try and have enough suction to get that sewage up that hill. And that is where our biggest problem is with this. We have rebuilt the pump on this 8 different times. This truck is the lifeblood.
That's not the one I'm talking about.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm talking about the truck 71.
Oh, truck 71, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the first one seems obvious, but, truck 71, 93,000 miles, I get it, close to 100,000, but transmission is starting to have problems. What are the problems? And, again, if it was rebuilt, the transmission was rebuilt, and it's going out.
I don't know if we've replaced this one's transmission.
I'm saying it's starting to go out. We haven't replaced it yet.
Okay, so it's still on its original transmission, is that what you're saying?
Correct.
I think he's mixing up originally which truck you were talking about.
Sorry for the confusion. Any other questions on operating capital before we move on to projects?
I have this one. Didn't we just get new cameras like 3 years ago?
One of the first things I did, sir, when I was put in charge of sewers, I asked for a camper truck. That would have been all inclusive. It would have allowed us to use it for maintenance and use it for the larger projects. That was not approved. After that, I moved on to outsourcing the camera work, and we just kind of made do with the maintenance camera that we have. I finally got the camera cleaning and maintenance on the budget for 2023, and we started that project. And the hope was that over the next 3 to 5 years, we'd be able to spread that camera work out and get our whole system cameraed and kind of up to where we are. But because of the budgetary issues, all of that has been cut next year. And so we are in that situation where, as I said before, we are fixing the things we know about and not looking for other things that we obviously know are out there. So not looking at the unknown.
I just remember discussions a couple years ago about the cameras and the system, et cetera.
All right, any more questions before I move on to projects? All right, so I'll start with the panels. So you'll note on page 77, kind of going through most of this stuff here. badly need panels replaced at Sands Rockaway and several other stations. These panels are 20 to 30 years old. This is what Alderman Osteen had on the agenda that I had talked about in our review of staff comments every meeting. We have, these panels have been rewired dozens and dozens of times. They are essentially a rat's nest. At Sands, we have 4 pumps, and we currently only have 3 working electrical panels to work with. The 4th one is down, so and it's going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to replace that. So if we're going to, rather than replace that one panel, we're just going to replace the whole thing, to fix the whole problem and not just one. So we're running on 3 pumps now. We can get if we can get that panel fixed, we'll go back up to 4. Rockaway is no different. Rockaway, even though all the panels are working, it is in the same situation, and I'm telling you right now, if we don't do something about this, somebody's going to get hurt. These panels are in very bad shape, and they need to be replaced. Those are just the top 2. We had put 8 in that ARPA grant, but that was just the start. Remember, we have 88 of these large 3-phase stations, and every single one of these panels is going on 20, 25, 30 years old. They're all going to work. We're going to have to go through all of them and replace them over the next few years.
Mike, what do you mean by hurt? Like electrocuted? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, sir, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Mike, do you have any idea which ones are the worst?
The ones that are in the budget this year. Sands, Rockaway, and there's probably 5 or 6 that we have that we've put, you see right near the bottom on the total lift station, 3-phase panel improvements. I put 10 there. So we have 88 to fix. So that they're all aging. We need to replace them all over a number of years. This is just to get us started. We're not trying to do it all in one year. We're just trying to get the worst ones, the biggest ones, the ones that cannot fail, taken care of, and then kind of work through them over future budget years. Station rehabs, in order for us to keep up with our aging infrastructure in our system, we should be looking at rehabbing 3 to 5 stations per year. Every one of the construction projects listed are shovel ready. So if you look at the budget here, until you get down to, I'm sorry, she put it at where's the engineering? Right, the 3rd item there is engineering. So lift station improvements, KK37, D7173, 29.1, 29.5, 30-1. Gina, make a note, that's supposed to be 30-5, not 30-1. Those are, so the kind of the way we're setting this up is we're trying to have projects ready every fall to bid for the next spring. So except for line 3, all these other projects are ready to go, and they're either out to bid now or will be out to bid either by the end of the year or shortly after the first of the year. So every one of these projects is ready to go, shovel ready, so that we can kind of start to really dig into some of these rehabs that we need to get done. If you do the math, 88 stations, if you rehab 3 to 5 a year, you're going to be rehabbing them about every 20 years. Now, obviously, we're not going to rehab a station that doesn't need it, but that is a good plan to be on if you look at it from a helicopter view. Is rehab 3 to 5 stations a year as needed, and you're always going to be in a good place with your stations over a 20 to 25 year period. All right, I'll move on to odor control. Between the Sands Gravity main project and new odor control methods being proposed, we believe that we will be able to make headway on the odor issues at Sands. Vapex and other odor control methods are being proposed at other stations with odor issues as well. 3 days from now, when we go to the board meeting, you guys probably already have the packets. We've got 2 major projects that are going to move forward. We're gonna hopefully go ahead and get the contract out for the Sands gravity main replacement project and get approval to go ahead and start early on the Sands odor control stuff so that over the winter we can get these things at this station worked out and move forward and hopefully be in a better place with odor control. The other two major odor control issues that we're trying to tackle in 2024 are 53-1 and the station at Passover 29, that's 29-1. When we get to the board meeting, you'll see it, but I showed this to Alderman Hoffman, but we've got some pretty interesting data about the level of H2S in the sand station and some other stations that we're going to be talking about that kind of give us some real data about how well Vapex will handle some of the odor coming from those stations. All right, so just to kind of finish this out, want to make a quick statement about the overall department. We are experiencing system growth and have been adding an average of 6 stations to our system per year over the last 3 years. Once we have some of these larger projects that are currently under construction out in there, Harper's Cove, the apartments at Sycamore, Oasis, we're going to be adding a lot of stations over the next few years, okay? There is a real possibility that by 2030, you're going to have more than 1,500 stations that we own out there. We've talked a lot about the sewer assessment that did not pass. We talked a lot about updating our sewer master plan. I am behind all of this. We have to get to a point where we can kind of wrap our hands around where, how far we've come in the last 20 years with operations in this particular system and public works as a whole. If that doesn't go through, my plan is to do my own research, reach out to some of the cities that have similar sized systems, take a look at their operations, and try, instead of recreating the wheel, kind of see what I can find or what I can learn from looking at some of their systems. So that's pretty much all I have. Any questions on major projects? Any questions on what we're doing here?
Yes. The sewer system reconstruction LOK, okay, that is Tantera, correct?
Yes, sir.
Is that the work that we're doing that we're basically required to by the law, by the settlement?
No. And that, the very first night, this is the particular project that I'm speaking of. Depends how much risk adverse you want to be. My personal opinion on the financial side is we don't put any money unless we have to over in Tantera until we know, one, how that contract is gonna work out and the legalities of that, and how they're gonna pay for their own upgrades needed. Now, I understand to get something, we gotta give something else up, and so maybe that's risky. So in my opinion, I think as we work through that contract in Tantera, those users, I do believe, need to pay for their own rehab, their own infrastructure, whether that's 7.5 million, 9.5, whatever that is. And let's say we get where we can get a district over there. My fear is that the city will not be able to be reimbursed back for Tantera. So if we can just, again, this is operational, not just my financial. If you are willing to take some risk and whatever that be, it may not be beneficial, but I would say don't spend any money at this point in time on Tantera that we absolutely do not have to until we know how we can fund those separate things in there. And that project is not part of a recent conflict we're dealing with, but it is part of that $7.5 million plan.
So this would be part of the major upgrade.
Right.
Okay. Where are we at with the work that we have to do based on the settlement?
It's done,
I know we started in we started this year.
What we got completed was enough for the particular homeowner to now have a different connection so they can abandon the connection in their basement, which is part of the ongoing legal stuff. And I don't really want to talk about any more than that, but we have done our point to this point. We are set for trial.
No, yeah, well, I don't want to get into this. So
But
we
this
have
was
done
not a
what the
requirement.
settlement said we had to do. This this 1.2 is Tantera. Is there anything else in 24 budgets is Tantera?
Yeah, there's
Station
no-
TL005, those two particular Tantera
Walker,
states.
okay, yeah.
Fine.
That's the 865.
Okay, well, I don't have any problem with approving the budget, but I don't think we should move forward with the projects until we, unless it's not appropriate for us to have it in the budget, until we approve that, until we get the things settled with the contract. I wish Cole was here to answer that question. Is he comfortable with leaving it in the budget and not hampering his situation?
Cole and I have talked about it, and no, there's no, us working on the contract and us working on a particular situation, taking out or leaving either one of these three did not jeopardize that.
Okay.
So we are, in fact, we've got some meetings, to hopefully start scheduling with the association over there. So, including myself in that, just on the money and financial side, but we are starting to meet with them. So we should have more updates on.
So these two areas right here, there will be nothing expended out of any of that at this point.
That is my recommendation, unless there is some other thing I'm missing, or unless it just puts us in a very risky
You need that in the
situation.
motion form, because that's a directive I think I would like to see staff note.
Just one of these projects, the TL 005 improvements, that was not technically part of the Tantera rehab. Well, I don't know, maybe it may have been, but that's more of a directive we have from DNR.
Okay,
so I don't know, I mean, I'm happy to, if you want me to investigate whether or not we can wait on it, I'm happy to do so, but Dave and I had prepared some documents. DNR had asked us what we're gonna do about this specific problem related to this station, and we had given them the direction that we were gonna put it in the budget for 2024. Dave, I believe your people have already started working on that project, and we are probably pretty close to the point where we're gonna be ready to bid that out at some point right after the first of the year. Is that fair?
Correct.
So
I just think if there's other solution, it makes me nervous, and again, you may have to do these things, but the 1.22, no, I think, now, we have something crazy goes on and we have to start it, but I think it makes me worried by creating a financial plan for those users and user rates. We won't be able to pay ourselves back if we do some kind of special bonding or a different district, and I just think if we can hold off on anything Tantera, let's work out the contract, let's work out what our responsibilities are.
Yeah,
and I know the TL005 is in Tantera, but again, what if we aren't in the sewer business in Tantera again? So what do we have to do? Are there other solutions? I just think we may know more in 6 more months. We may know, we may not, we may be talking about it again this time next year, but.
I would like to direct, or to the board, direct the city administrator to get with the attorney, get with Cochran, get with Mike on these two projects, and I support what your feelings are, but I also support the fact that if there are certain things we need to do to keep the system running and stuff, we've got to do it too. And I don't think we need, there's some discussion that needs to be had with that, and I'd just like to see that had before we expend more dollars in those areas. If we got to, we got to. I mean, if DNR says we got to, and I'm okay, but I think we're at a point.
Well, there's 2 million of your 3.6 additional million transfers in from CIT and water. So I just think to be determined, but however the board.
If there's nothing legally that's stopping us from doing it, and if DNR's got a real problem and something got to pay for, okay, but I think we should be holding our money close to our vest and not helping with that at all, unless it's something we have to do. I totally agree with that.
I think regardless of what DNR is dictating, I think what Gina stated is DNR is telling us we need to do this, but it may not be us.
Well,
I just think
And
there's
that's part
other
of what we were
variables.
discussing is that may not be our problem
And
at
if it's-
all, or our sewer system.
And those are some answers that I would like for you to get.
Chicken for the egg, but if you want to placehold it and just know, transfer doesn't happen tied to these two, and nothing happens until we know. I'm okay with that. It's however you guys are comfortable, but I just really caution. I think we were gonna know more factors surrounding all around Tantera that could change the decision making.
So this DNR thing could possibly just be them suggesting it, or it could not even be our responsibility.
Correct.
Right.
Well, it's not,
In DNR's mind, you own that system, whether that's
they're not
actually what's happened or not. And I mean, if there's problems out there, they're gonna be looking at you for spills or whatever fines or violation will come up.
Unless we say it's not our system anymore.
But we're kind
Tantera
of,
HOA is now in charge of that.
Well,
Not us.
I would just understand everything everybody's saying. I just think it's important to say, I think you're gonna have an uphill battle convincing DNR that you don't have responsibility for that system.
Right now.
And what is the time frame for these improvements? Is it a dictate that the DNR is saying this must be completed by?
They essentially put us on a schedule of compliance that we would do the work in 2024.
Okay.
All of it.
Yeah.
This
just
TL005.
When it's supposed to be finished by December 31st, 2024.
I mean, we didn't give an exact date in 24. We just said the report that we provided them said that we would be making improvements during the budget year of 2024.
Making improvements, that's nice and vague, I like that.
Yes.
budget's not approved.
And if I could, to build on what Bob said, and kind of what everybody is saying here is that y'all should talk to Cole, have a
Yes,
conversation
no,
with him.
absolutely.
And I don't think that DNR can tell us that we have to do that, number one, because I don't think they can prove that we own the system, all right? But that all has to be still panned out. And so I don't know what we've spent so far in designing this, but along with what Kevin's saying, I agree. We shouldn't be spending any more money on either one of these projects. And I think that's what Gina's saying.
Right.
And I think that's.
I think you need to get Cole about that
Well,
conversation.
Cole, the 1.2 million, Cole and I are on the same page. I do not have variables and on the 865, but my same philosophy stands.
You have some homework to
Involves
do first.
Tantera, we might have so much more information to know what our steps are, and we are worried about transfers in, so how do we pause or slow down where we can?
And move forward and take care of our own
Well,
expenses that we need to do.
Tantera aside, the projects that we have in the budget for the sewer system for 2024 are projects that are sorely needed. You don't replace these panels, I can promise you, we're either gonna end up paying more to replace them in an emergency situation, or we're gonna get somebody hurt. Some of these other stations that need to be rehabbed are the stations that are the biggest troubles that we have in the system. They are stations that it's not, oh, they might fail. It's they're going to fail. Are they going to fail in the next 8 months, 10 months, 12 months? I don't know, but they're going to fail. So just keep that in mind, because I think we've all seen with both the Sands issue and the Rockaway issue, you're going to pay more for it if you do it on the back end. So just keep that in mind. That's all I have on sewer system. Unless there are any other questions.
Well, many things have been long neglected, which is where we are right now in catching up, and we need to address it, absolutely.
All right.
Excellent presentation, by the way.
Yes, you
Very, very close to the first one.
All right, no other questions, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Whoa.
Wait, I do have a couple things I was supposed to bring back. I'll
Okay.
start there, maybe. I
Oh, I'm
was just
sorry.
waiting,
Yep,
no,
yep.
I was just seeing about sewer. So 2 things that I was asked the first night, the 4% premium was requested to do a weighted, potentially weighted by quartile. The cost differences, if you just do 4% flat across the city, was about $198,000 is what it added citywide. If we do a premium like we did last year and weighted it per quartile, that's about $180,000. So it cuts it down less than $20,000 for that. Retirement. So thanks to Carrie, she did a little homework when we were talking about the retirement. Currently, we have the 1% match option. 88% of employees are utilizing the match. So that blew my mind. Carrie had been kind of
Good.
tracking it. So awesome, 88% back. That was as of this snapshot in time. So if we would, you guys had mentioned that to bump that up to 3%. So if we do the 3%, I estimated maybe not as high as 88%, but 2/3 of those same employees, 2/3 would do all the way up to 3%. Could cost citywide approximately less than 125,000. Now, obviously each fund's a little different, but it was about 123,000 if we would give the options for another 2% match. And again, I'm estimating 2/3 might jump on. With 88% for 1%, well, what's another percent here and there? So you theoretically could have the same, but I kind of estimated it as 2/3. So those were the two things I was asked to bring back. Information that I have.
Then my suggestion is that we move the option somewhere, I don't know the right time and exactly how we announce it, that there's an option to match 3% more instead of just 1% more.
Now, is it 3 more or 3 total?
3 total.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
3 total.
I was gonna say,
I'm sorry, I did say that wrong. I said that
That's
wrong.
all.
I did say
I
that
could
wrong.
see Gina's like, oh, that's not what I calculated.
2% more for a total of
Okay.
3.
Total of 3, okay.
Should we wait until after we decide on the loggers, or or is that forever?
No.
No.
So that's a motion.
If you want me to add it to draft 2.
Second.
Okay.
Now we can have discussion if you want.
All right, discuss it.
Yeah, discussion.
You just answered my question.
Okay.
So, I think, is a motion required this time?
It's up to the board. If they want to solidify it, or if I get a consensus, draft 2 will be included. And sometimes if they want to do motions to make sure that gets there and it's clear, that I will take that.
We have a motion and a second, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay. All right. That is the only 2 things that I was coming, I know I have to answer administrative reimbursement, and I will get that. I didn't get that done today. But other than that, what else am I missing, or what else
CIT.
do you guys want to?
No, there's one other thing on the, if we did it like last year, it would have been $20,000 less on the 4%.
If we
Right,
wait,
quartiles.
yes,
Okay.
if we waited and chased about.
And so you don't think there's any particular value, okay, so overall, it wouldn't be a total 4% across the board, because it's $20,000 less.
Right, if you're gonna wait
Okay.
it, then, yeah.
So is there any value in your mind in trying to figure out how to get that other 20,000 into those lower quartiles?
Well,
That it would be
let me-
different than last year, I guess is
Let
what
me
I.
give you, okay, so maybe I can answer it in a roundabout way with some information. So as I was kind of looking at this, now, this budget has a pay plan that we're moving the floor and ceilings. And we're moving the floor and ceilings 10.8%, which is good. We've not done that in a while. We've organically, the people within those new floor and ceiling have been brought up because we have been very aggressive in beginning wages higher. So a lot of people are gonna move back down to the first quartile. We do have a lot of new employees. Basically, 90% of our employees, 90% are gonna be in the first and second quartile. And that includes your tenure employees who have been in their positions a long, long time. So they over time have been condensed, or, had compression. So 10% of our employees right now, only 10% of the full-time are in the third and fourth quartile. So we are fixing our compression, but we have a lot of new ones, but because of the floor and ceiling. So, and I'll use myself as an example because I don't want to talk about myself. I've been in this position almost 10 years, and I will barely be in the second. It's just how over time we kind of got behind. And these premiums, the idea was to keep the current ones moving through as we change the floor and ceiling. So last year, the board did want to do it by weighted quartile, but since we've moved the floors and ceilings, you have a lot of those now back in the second quartile that were in the third, because that kind of moves it. So to me, I just think 4%, the economy affects every employee the same, affects all employees the same regardless of what level, regardless. The merits that the employees get, the first quartile is a lot higher because you've got your new employees, you want to get them, you want to keep competitive. So what value it is to put that other 18 somewhere else, I think by giving the premium, it's keeping those currently in the levels moving toward to stay competitive in their particular field. And weighted does shave a little bit off, but honestly, if you're closer to that 4% or 3.75, 90% of employees are gonna get that because 90% of our employees are within the first and second quartile. And some of that is because we've
Raise the ceiling.
raised the
That's
ceiling and
why
the floor, so
drop.
naturally you're gonna have some drop back. We've made progress. But when you're only talking about 10% of your full-time employees are in the third and fourth, and there's only one in the fourth now. So.
So,
I
but
don't
the
know if that
4%
helps.
is already in the budget the way it is, all the way across the board.
It is.
Move on as far as I'm concerned.
You good with that?
Okay.
Okay.
As good as I like to be, it was close enough.
Sounds good. It's pretty close.
I'm glad, because I didn't totally understand where you were not, and I was trying to figure out, I'm good with it.
Just a quick statement regarding the 401k match. Remember that it's discretionary based on the employee. Even though we're approving up to the 3% match, it doesn't mean every employee is going to match or want to take that 3% option. So it's kind of hard to do numbers because you can't gauge whether they want to stay at the 1 or up to 2 or 2.5 or 3. So it's
And I made an
kind of hard to
estimate.
say, here's what how much more it's going to cost the city. That's going to be the assumption that every employee increases that match to 3%, and every employee will not. She haven't dealt with this previously.
I estimated 2/3 of the employees would choose to go ahead and up to the 2 and 3. So I had to pick something, yeah.
Yeah.
Could be a little more, could be a little less.
Anyway, I'm just saying it's a hard number because it's going to go back to the employee themselves, whether they want to stay at the 1% or go up to the 3.
Okay, and then, one of the things that I brought up along the way, and, we need to make motions or whatever we need to do is I have no problem and want to make sure that we do the Veterans Memorial. I just don't think it should be taken out of CIT in the situation we're in. And so, I don't know whether.
I'd rather it come out of general.
Pardon?
It was originally coming out of general fund.
It is in general fund, but it have the matching revenue reimbursement source is CIT, so it's not coming out of unrestricted funds.
It's being funded out of CIT.
Yes.
I don't have any problem with it coming out of CIT. If it's not gonna come out of CIT, don't forget, something's gonna be cut from the general.
Well, then let's just find out. I'll make a motion that the Veterans Memorial is funded out of normal general fund and not funded by CIT.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, motion passes. Anything else, anyone?
Yeah.
Any other direction?
Well, before we start cutting things out of general, I think that the area that I would like to say of the 4 full-time positions, that the IT and the clerk for the HR is 2 priorities. So the other 2, the communications and the economic development, those 2 need to be cut. You want the Veterans Memorial to come out of general, you've got to cut some money. And right there is what's got to be cut.
Is that a motion? Making that a motion?
Sure.
Do I have a second?
Where are you gonna cut, guys? You just took $100 and some odd thousand out of general. What are you gonna cut?
Not that.
Do I have a second? No. It does. Anyone have anything else?
I do. I'm not exactly sure how to pose this, but I'm a big fan of parks, and I like Eric a lot, and I think spending $600,000 to pave a soccer field that we have no idea what we're going to use it for in 2 or 3 years, when people can just park on the grass. Right now, when we're trying to find places to cut, paving soccer field for $600,000. It seems crazy.
Our ordinance.
Well, then we can remove it from the master plan, can we not?
Well, what he's talking about, it doesn't currently meet our planning and zoning or our parking requirements and
Parking
our own
requirements
ordinances that we
require-
require other commercial.
It's a regulated
Businesses to do.
means, and we can't not do it.
So we can't let people park on that grass
No,
unless we change the ordinance.
no.
No, we're requiring other people to have minimum amount of parking based on their usage of their commercial business, and we are not abiding by our own ordinance. We cannot continue to do that. We've done it for too long. We should have done this a long time ago.
Well,
The designated parking, you can't call grassy areas and dirt designated parking.
we
It's
can.
compliance issues.
We can.
Sure, we can continue to do as I say and not as I do, and that's not the philosophy we should have.
Well, either way, even if it's not going to be used for parking, I think using $600,000 to pave a soccer field when we have all this other stuff that we're trying to pay for. Not to mention, parks are supposed to be green, so you're going to turn it into asphalt. And just from the people that I've gone around and talked to around town, business owners mainly, the look of confusion on their face is apparent to me. And I don't, how do you know that in 3 years, when we're about to do a study, what if that study comes back in 6 months, right after we pave $600,000 in the parking lot, they say, you should build a lacrosse field there. Then are we gonna rip the concrete pavement up?
Alderman Ross?
I was just gonna say that the whole idea about compliance or standards and so forth, about how the park is used compared to a business, I've never figured out how that was a reasonable comparison. And although that was discussed and Kerry talked about that, it didn't equate to me, okay? Some people think that we're talking out of both sides of our mouths if we say we don't need to have the parking at the park, but we have to have it in business, okay? But parks are different in my mind, okay? But that's conjecture. I mean, we can decide that at a different time. And to be quite honest, whenever you and I talked about that, we were both standing there with Eric. I forgot about that day, to be quite honest. But I don't think that we should be spending $300-some thousand worth of CIT when we don't think we can even fund the repairs that might. I mean, at the end of the day, and man, I really hate to make this any longer, but Mike's telling me there's millions of dollars that haven't even been put in some of these forecasts that he believes that we need to spend. There is not enough money right now, based on what Mike is telling me needs to be done, for us to even fund everything that needs to be done with CIT. And to be spending it on behalf of that, $300,000 on parks, I just don't see how we should be doing that. Whether or not we need to be compliant, that's a whole nother subject, but we haven't ever done it before. And at the end of the day, we are, in my mind, we don't need to do this. It would be nice to, of course, but it's not the right time to spend that kind of money.
I don't think it'd be nice to, but that's a different conversation.
Sure.
But as far as $600,000 right now to pay.
So perhaps our legal department should come back to us saying, for our compliance, this is what you need or not need. Because I seem to think, and I think Kevin's agree with me, I think that we're not compliant with our own ordinances regarding the amount of allotted parking spaces on blacktop surfaces based on average daily usage, blah, blah, blah. I'm not the person that knows that number, but I think somebody higher up in our legal department, Cole, can probably get us that number and say, yes, this is the need to spend this year, or guess what? Shelve it, we don't need to have it.
Wait, so we only can park on blacktop in Osage Beach?
Let's let Cole and Carrie answer these. We
Depending on
don't
the-
have to make decisions on
Yeah.
that. This has
Let
been
them
discussed. to the
Planning and
right.
zoning, yes.
We are not, I'm not an expert on that. I'm not gonna speak for the city planner or.
I believe Mayor Harris
attorney.
would give us some interjection on that, because I think he was under some issues with the city regarding how many parking spaces are blacktop versus chat or gravel.
So we can get that answered. I guess tonight I just want direction. If there's changes in the philosophy or direction on funding for CIT, just like we addressed with veterans, any other direction you can give me that you want to see, or up to me to balance with the parameters you have given me to get you a draft to. That's what I'm looking for.
Well, I would like to make a motion to scrap the parking lot $600,000.
Well, we can't until we
We
get
can't.
direction from legal, because right now it is.
You say 6, you say 3, what?
300,000 of it is funded by CIT, 300,000
It's
is out.
partially funded.
Okay, thank you. I kept, I was thinking,
There's 300 out of CIT, that's what I was focused on, okay? I don't think there's money for that.
Mayor, you
Yeah,
made a
he
motion.
made a motion, so you have to take a second, and if it doesn't go, then it has to die. So he already made a motion, so you have to take one.
Even though
Yeah.
we could be.
Yeah, he made a motion.
All right, we have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those in favor, raise your hand, please. All right, all those opposed? All right.
This is what dies.
So the last thing I think that you're still looking for is what should we do around CIT towards sewer? Is that right?
Yeah, the only direction on sewer that I think is how, put on hold, the placehold of that nearly 2.1 million in projects, which will affect the actual CIT transfers.
So I think until something changes, we're gonna continue to fund operations, based on what I think I'm hearing, we're gonna continue to fund operations and subsidize the operations of the sewer with CIT.
I'm
Unless we
directed
change something.
differently.
Right.
What you
Okay.
want directed to
So
look
just
at.
so everyone knows, and if we want to talk about some other time, and we've got other time, this budget doesn't have to be all finished up tonight. What that forecast basically says is that there's not going to be any money for any parks. Okay, it's gone. Okay, and I don't really want to raise rates triple. Okay, but something has to change. Okay, because not only have we spent all of our reserves in sewer, okay, but we're right now forecasting to spend about $6 or $8 million more that we haven't, that is not in the rates, okay, over the next 3 or 4 years.
It's not in the rates and it's not in my cash flow because I think it's important to really drill down to what that 5 years look like, but it's obviously got a lot of zeros.
So just curious, if Cole comes back and says, yeah, there's a way, and Carrie comes back and says, yeah, there's a way we can park on there if we do this, and this is within our legal rights, you guys still gonna spend $600,000?
Stop kicking that dead horse, Justin. I'll circle back to it. We're gonna circle back to it.
I want to know.
It was just voted down.
We're gonna circle back to
We'll
it.
get the answer
I just
and
wanna
then you
know,
guys can discuss
so we're
it
gonna still
further
get it
after.
from Cole, and, hey, sorry, my first time, guys, but I wanna know.
Yeah,
Right? That's just the deal. We're still gonna get information back from Cole and from Carrie, because maybe everyone's opinion's a little different if there's a better way, that's all I'm saying. Yes, we are.
Alderman Rush.
motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody.
You thought, what the heck else is he gonna talk about?